regarding the strategic plan, the successor agency to the Turlock Redevelopment Agency meeting agenda, and the regularly scheduled meeting for the City Council. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Sorry, you got to stand back up. See, I told you, this is going to be fun tonight, guys. All right, ready? Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, now you may be seated. All right, we're going to work off of the special meeting agenda first. So we will move to public participation. You can comment on any item that's on the agenda. You'll have 5 minutes. But if you'd like to wait till the regularly scheduled meeting, you can also do that. So we'll open it for public participation. I know Jessica's House, if you'd like to come up and present first. Jessica's House is a great ministry that they will talk about, but they're the ones that are responsible for all the great artwork that's out in our gallery tonight. So take it away.
Well, thank you so much for having us this evening. And we want to just introduce the program tonight. We support grieving children and families. We have about 150 children, teens, and young adults in our groups. We support every child in our program has experienced the death of either a parent or a sibling, and the whole family comes for as long as they need support. So it's not just a 6 or 8 week program, but it's ongoing for as long as they need support for the whole family. And I want to introduce Jessica's parents tonight, Michael and Danielle Everett. Michael, you want to come up?
This is very dangerous here in turning it over the microphone. 3 years, it's been 3 years now, right? This is our third. Yeah, this is our third year since we opened Jessica's House. And who's been to the Jessica House up here? I know, Gary, you haven't. You promised me you were going. Who else is? Matthew, have you been over there? Okay. If you haven't been, you need to go. Robert, you need to go. You've been there. I've seen you there. Yeah. So you need to go by there and check it out. It's a great free service for grieving families, teens, adults. Even the adults go there. So I think it's one of a kind. There's no other place like it in the United States. So we were lucky to have it here. And it's a tremendous help. You saw a couple people up here today that talked about a little bit about it. It's just a little glimpse, but even volunteer, if you want to volunteer, so, you know, anybody out there want to volunteer, we need volunteers, and it's a wonderful experience, and we're just glad to be a part of it. And it's named after our daughter, Jessica Everett, which we lost her at 9 years of age with leukemia. Some of you guys knew her, and if you didn't, she was something. And I believe her spirit lives on in the Jessica House with these kids and the attitude and the philosophy we have there. So thanks again, and we great to be in Turlock, because Turlock's a great community and a great support, everything we've done there. And so I wouldn't want to be in another town with Jessica's House. So thank you, thanks a lot. And come by and see us.
Well, thank you so much, Michael. I'd also like to recognize Jessica's grandparents, Larry and Judy Christensen, as well. Thank you for being here. Tonight, we'd like to introduce Teray. Teray's been in our program since the beginning, and she lost her dad, and she wants to talk to you a little bit about her dad and also share a song with you today.
Hi, my name is Trey McQueen. My dad was killed in a fatal motorcycle crash in 2009 when my family and I still lived in Mission Viejo, California. We moved up here, and before this we were attending another therapy group that really didn't help me especially, and we started going to Jessica's House, and it helped so much. I made tons of friends, and when one of my really good friends that I made doing Yes Company's father died, I actually recommended her to Jessica's House, and it's helped her family quite a lot as well. Unfortunately, I'm not able to attend Jessica's House this year since this is my first semester of college, as I just graduated from high school. So it's kind of not as fun not going there every other week. I don't have as much to look forward to. I know, but it's hard to get a ride when you don't have a car and you can't drive. Well, I didn't formally get kicked out, though.
want to take it outside for a second and then figure out what's going on? Yeah.
But no, and it is not. But actually, I am one of the artists featured out there. Mine is the terribly drawn Blue Rose with the lyrics of Safe and Sound by Taylor Swift and the Civil Wars on there. And when I actually did that, I had never heard the song before. I knew what it was, and it sounded like something really interesting. So when we were doing that project, I had brought my sketchbook with me, and I looked up the lyrics, and I'm like, this song it's a really appealing song because it is about loss and struggling to find a place where you fit in and where you can still be yourself in a world where everything's kind of falling apart around you. And know that's something I went through a lot after my dad died because I was only 12 when he died, and I had just started junior high school. And it was kind of just this shock because it was very sudden. It was really hard for me to deal with, especially because at that point I had so much anger because he was hit. And we did take it to court. The woman who hit him did not look at my family once through the entire proceedings. And what made it harder is my brother is 2 years younger than me, so he was only 9 and 10 when the accident actually happened. And I was the only child home when my mom received the news. So I was the first one to know. And then as my siblings found out, my brother Jamal was living with us at the time, and it was only the second time I'd really been able to be around him because he lived in Canada for most of my life. So I was the one who opened the door to him when he came home, and then my brother Ramar was living in Costa Mesa with his mother, and my sister Carissa was in Canada and struggling to get out of an abusive household with her biological mother. So it was kind of just this whole mess. And then our landlord raised our rent, and we had to move. So it was just kind of this whole terrible situation. And then I actually listened to this song, and I kind of connected with it really well because it was kind of just something that was pretty much what I had gone through in like the 2 or 3 years leading up to that, and it'll actually be 6 years this 30th for my dad. So yeah, if you allow me, I'd like to sing a little bit of the song. Please. I remember tears streaming down your face when I said I'd never let you go, when all those shadows almost killed your light. I remember you said, don't leave me here alone, but all that's dead and gone and past tonight. Just close your eyes, the sun is going down, you'll be alright, no one can hurt you now, come morning light, you and I'll be safe and sound. Thank you.
That was beautiful, Trey. Thank you so much. At Jessica's House, we provide a lot of therapeutic art activities in a way to really heal. And we have our art therapist and program director, Sarah Cree, who will share a little bit about what we do with art at Jessica's House.
So my name is Sarah, and I am the program director. And we do a bunch of different activities. It could be something from we play hula hoop games, we dance and move around. We have marching bands that annoy our parents tremendously during our group times and all around the house. But we do lots of art therapeutic activities and getting to share and work on things together as a group. And we break all of our kids up into their ages. So for my group, I am part of the parent loss group, and I have little, so they're from 4 to about 10. And so we do a bunch of different activities, and just having another kid be there and say, my dad died, and say, mine too, is such a powerful thing and then be able to do the art together is just really great. So I'm going to share one piece of art that we've done. This is from our Heartstrings group, and this is our group that has experienced the death of a pregnancy loss or an infant loss. And so here, I'll show you guys. This is our piece. And so what they did is that they wrote a letter to their child that had died, and expressed different things, something that maybe they wish they had been able to tell them even though they were an infant, or things that they wish that they could have done with them when they're older, playing soccer, going to the park together, things that they would not be able to do with that child. And then they got to fold it up, and the heart is made with nails, and they got to pick different colors that were associated with that. So what color represented how it felt to go to the hospital? What color did it feel like to hear that your child had died? What color did it feel like when you came home? What color represents the other people that were there? Well, 6 months later, a year later, what does that feel like? So they got to pick the different colors and put that over their heart, and they were able to fill in their letter. So that way they know that the letter's always there and what it means to them, but they don't have to share it if they don't want to. And so some of our parents or the kids got to write it on the back so they could read it if they wanted to, but some kids just chose to hide it. So that's just one of our projects that we do.
And last, we have our wonderful Nancy Daly, who many of you may know, and she is also on staff with us and works with the kids, and she is going to share something tonight.
Good evening. I think somebody read this already to the group, right? One of the students. But this book is very dear to my heart. I worked at the Cancer Center for many years, and I work with kids whose family members have cancer, and they gave me this book, and little did I know it was going to have a great effect. It was before Jessica's House was created, but it's a story about two children who's scared because there's a lightning and thunder, and they ask all these questions. Are you going to be near to me? Is someone who died going to be near to me? And they talked about the invisible string. And this book we give to every new family that comes into the house to orientation. But for me personally, my husband passed away, Gary, 3 years ago, and this book had an impact on our granddaughter, Jaden. She still talks about that she's looking out the window and pulling on the invisible string, tugging at Pops' heart. And I think it's important that children know that, I'm sorry, I was looking at them, that they still have a relationship in their heart with the person that died. And so tonight, I want to know if anybody needs an invisible string, if somebody in their family has passed away, if they get, this is a red string.
While she's doing that, Jessica House is also for the parents. The kids can't be just dropped off. The parents have to be there too, to wait, and they have a group. And what surprised me probably most of anything when we started Jessica House, that these parents are getting more out of it than the kids. So I just want to bring that up. And I lead one of the parent groups. My wife, she's in the littles, but it's a tremendous thing. The parents get together and talk, and it's something. Hurry up, Nancy. Oh, shit, back. Oh.
I think it's important that watching these children in the last 3 years have each other and say me too. And when my husband passed away, this book meant a lot. That being with the kids has helped me to heal. And watching these kids help each other, it's been an amazing experience. But this is a great book to give to people if they've lost a loved one. You can get it on Amazon. So thank you.
Well, at Jessica's House, just in closing, we like to say that the two most powerful words in the English language are me too, and that we're never alone. So thank you for having us tonight.
Thank you guys so much for putting the art together to come bring it down here to City Hall. I think Jessica's house symbolizes what it is to be a community, and this is what makes Turlock great. So thank you so much for coming in and sharing the story and the background behind it, and we appreciate it, and I'll see you down there this week, huh? All right, thanks. Is there anyone else for public participation while I'm off with that? Absolutely. So I do have a few blue cards that we can wait till the regular meeting if you'd like. We are going to dive into the strategic plan. So if those blue card holders, if it's okay, we can wait till the regular meeting in about 40 minutes. Seeing no objections, I'll close public participation and we'll jump right into declaration of conflicts of interest and disqualifications. Looking left, looking right, seeing none. Moving on to scheduled matters. A request to adopt the City of Turlock 2015 to 2019 Mayor and City Council policy goals and implementation plan. I'm up. So the strategic plan. The strategic plan is something that has been going on for quite a few years here at the City of Turlock. And with this new election, we came in and I sat down with the city attorney, city manager, and we went over some of our goals that we'd like to accomplish in the next couple years for the city. As you know, we adopted a 2-year budget instead of a 1-year budget. And now we're adopting a strategic plan that we've renamed for 4 years. The City Council is very interested in looking long-term, as the city manager is and city attorney. And so we have decided to create a document that not only labels where we're going to go, but what are the benchmarks we're going to meet to get to those goals. And so we will be going through the 7 main policy objectives and explaining the outline. So some of you can follow along here. The departments are going to weigh in because they're intermixed, but I will turn the microphone over to the city manager. This is a special meeting in the fact that we want to have a dialogue, so please feel free to ask questions as the public, ask questions as council members, and we can keep moving forward. So city manager.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As you just articulated, Mayor, this has had a great deal of work and effort in it. I know the council has been at the workshops and put the time and energy in that helped us as we worked with the mayor to adopt what are the areas that really need to be worked on. And while we've had for years a strategic plan, this policy goals and implementation plan truly is going to have a level of accountability that maybe wasn't quite as refined in the prior strategic plans. And so as we adopt this as a final form, our hope is that we'll create a Gantt chart. Kelly K2 is working on that, and it will create a Gantt chart that actually tells us if we're staying on track. We'll report routinely. Obviously, as we prepare staff reports and information moving the city forward, they will reflect the information, the policy goals that have been set here will be integral to the planning and the staff reports and the work that we do. And we believe it gives us, as your staff, clear direction on where we need to focus our energies.
Absolutely. So we kind of listed 1 through 7 who's going to take on the leadership, and the city manager and I are up for effective leadership. But before I begin, one of the key things that we decided as a leadership team was that we wanted clear dates. When are you going to accomplish this? No later than what date? And so you'll see dates in here, and they're not stuff that we just picked out of the sky. It's not stuff that city manager and I said, this is when you'll accomplish this goal. We looked to the experts in each department to come up with the dates for those benchmarks, and that's why you see no later than June of 2016, and they have a good rationale as to why it'll take that long or that short of time. So that's just kind of giving you some background. So with that, we can list the policy goal and go to the action item, and we'll scroll through. And if there aren't many objections, hopefully the council has gone through this. We should be able to go through this in a timely manner.
So, Mayor, as we look at effective leadership, and all of the policy goals follow the same format. There's general principles followed by action items, and then the detail of each action item with the measurables to deliver that action item. So we'll focus at the general principles level as we move through each of the policy goals. But if we need to drill down, staff's ready to drill down. And so as we look at our general principles on effective leadership, they really do focus around innovation and the change. We know change will occur. It's inevitable. And so we need to be innovative, keep up with change. We need clear organizational purpose and vision. Much of that is achieved in this plan. We need to be accountable and provide recognition for the work that happens. We need to proactively respond as issues emerge. We expect to exhibit professional excellence in our behavior and demonstrate personal commitment to the organization and the community. and promote organizational and community engagement. It's interesting to have all the active transportation plan supporters here tonight. And it really does, this is really what we want to achieve. And then that will give responsive and timely communication both up through staff and to the mayor and council, so that we're keeping everyone informed. And we believe those are the general principles that will help us provide effective leadership, and the mayor and council to give us effective leadership. Happy to answer any questions or go into greater detail. I guess I'll just take this step further. You're seeing right now the 24-hour updates. You're seeing the daily reports that come from the police and the fire, and then on Monday through Friday, the daily updates, and then the weekly reflection on emerging issues that we're dealing with. And we're hoping that, for me, it's been very useful. I didn't think it would be as useful as it is. And we're finding within the organization there's a great deal of interest across the departments, because they don't know what all is happening in all the other areas. So it's actually, while it's a bit of work to get done, it's actually, we think, very useful, and be happy to listen to any feedback on how that's working. That's part of what we're committed to do here.
What he's getting at is these documents have been kind of something relatively new to the departments, and it's just basically bringing together information for the council so that we know what's going on in the city, that we're the first ones to find out. And also it creates that tracking accountability that we've been talking about that actually, like you said, is good for all of us. It just reminds us as to what we're trying to do. So it's been great. I think, yeah, if there's any other questions or comments. What we're going to do is, again, general principles, and then let's just list the action items. We don't need to go into them because hopefully the council's read them, and then we can move forward.
Yes, so that's the general principles for effective leadership. If we don't have any greater detail, we could go to policy, fiscal responsibility, policy goal number 2.
Correct. Are there any questions or comments on the action items to meet the general principles? Are we seeing how this flow is going? All right, perfect. Then we're going to move on to fiscal responsibility. And K2, Kelly Jacobs-Hunter. We have 2 Kellys in the room. That's why she's K2. So would you like to take us away?
Yes, thank you. Is it okay if I sit here? Or
Absolutely.
Would you like me to go
Yes.
up? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Policy goal number 2 is fiscal responsibility. We have 8 general principles, and our first one, and I think probably most important, is to create a balanced, sustainable budget. We will also be creating an effective strategy to address debt payments and any unfunded liabilities. We will identify and pursue revenue opportunities, including grants and outside sources of funding. We will create an efficient and effective organization. We are actively managing all contracts for services, which we're looking at a contract module that goes along with our financial management system. So they'll all be in a master contract file, and will be have greater accountability over them and be able to measure the progress of all the contracts. Number 6 is to ensure efficient use of resources and maximize value within departmental budgets. We would like to develop value-added partnerships with the public and private agencies, industry, and educational institutions, including but not limited to Stanislaus County Fair, California State University Stanislaus, Turlock Irrigation District, and the Turlock Unified School District. And our last general principle is to strive for interregional cooperation that will benefit everyone. We have 7 action items, and the first one is create a balanced and sustainable budget. Actually, this is kind of going to, we just kind of went over these. Identify existing contracts and identify management responsibility. We're going to track and report on proposed budget amendments. We'll identify, pursue, and report on grants. Plan, review, and update the capital improvement plan and the equipment replacement plan. Implement water and sewer rates to sustain services to implement capital improvement programs, and provide user-friendly financial information to stakeholders. And if you'd like, I can go into any detail on each action item if anyone has questions. You don't want me to keep reading?
No. I have actually, can you scroll down to action item number 1?
Yes.
So this is just one example that I'd like to express to the community because it's a good example. So create a balanced and sustainable budget. Okay, that sounds great, of course, right? We want to do that in our households. We want to do that for our city. but we've actually given ourselves benchmarks, clear benchmarks, that this coming up at the very end of the year, we'll take into consideration more accurate revenue and expenditures at the mid-year for budget review, November, December timeframe.
Right in November.
Right? So we'll reflect what our revenue income is, and we'll be able to look and see if we can get to that balanced mark. In addition, we have set the goal for fiscal year 2017-18 and also 2018-19 to be at balanced budgets when we adopt them in the very beginning. So these are very clear-cut goals that we are putting on paper that we will adopt tonight, that we're saying this is what we're going to strive to achieve. So this one's a little bit pretty kind of black and white. That's why I wanted to highlight it. But with that, any other questions or comments from the council? Yes, Councilman Nascimento.
Kelly, under the general principles number 2, it says create an effective strategy to address debt payments and unfunded liabilities. What are the action items, or how do you see us achieving that? 'Cause it's not clear necessarily in the action items. Maybe you can give me your thoughts on how we would address that. Or
I think one example would be to continue to look at any of our current debt to see if we can refinance it and, save on interest rates if we refunded them and reissued, the remaining debt. We just did that recently with one of our existing debt issues. So we'll continue to look at those and see if we did refinance, if we could save some money.
And we could certainly add that as tracking our debt and bond issuances, make sure that we're achieving the best rates. Probably worth maybe adding as an action item. And also, we know that PERS will continue to have changes, and there's additional things we're talking about. So maybe we should add an action item about tracking of PERS also. As council will recall, we've bought down some of our unsecured liability there in PERS with the last budget go around, but that's ever going to change, so both of those we could add.
Yes.
yeah, I think if the council's open, maybe it's something that we could add as an action item just to review along with the budget annually, that we take a look at those debts just to make sure that we are still aware of them and understand what opportunities may be there to minimize them or to refinance.
Yes, of course. I'll make sure there's a schedule, and we'll be able to go through each one and identify any of the debts that maybe we might be able to, if we refinance or even paid off, if we could save money over the long run.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions or comments for the council? All right. Yes,
Mayor, before we move on to past policy goal number 2, I noticed there's a lot of discussion about providing user-friendly financial information to stakeholders and making information readily available to the public. And we had a presentation a couple months ago from OpenGov. I think everyone thought it was a very user-friendly tool, great for the public to be able to see kind of the city's finances at a glance. And it seems to me that maybe we want to add that. That would achieve a lot of the goals that are set here, and maybe it's something we want to explicitly call out that we will look into that or by a certain date implement OpenGov. I think the startup is takes a month or something to get it up and running, and so I mean if there's agreement on the council, I think that would be something that we should add in as an action item, is to adopt OpenGov as a platform for the city's website by a certain date. I don't know if I could make a motion.
Well, actually, real quick, I just don't think that the strategic plan is the appropriate place to put specific as to what your line item is for a specific website or a venue or an individual to bring us this information. I think action item 7 lays it out very clearly, that will identify methods that current staff can undertake to make financial data more accessible without additional financial burden. And it leverages a new website, which is going to be what Councilmember Jacob is working on to showcase financial data, graphs, et cetera, from a 2-year adopted budget. So I think that those goals will help us meet the action item, which is to provide user-friendly financial information, rather than specifically stating this OpenGov is going to get an earmark for providing us financial data. So I just don't think this is the right venue for it.
So we'll have that discussion. So by January 2016, we'll have that discussion. Is that?
Yeah, that would be part of the conversation, absolutely, because we're going to look at the current new website that's coming forward. We're going to be working with Kelly Jacobs-Hunter and her team to make sure that they exercise all options to get all those graphs and charts and everything up and running. So I think that's when we'll take it up.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
Perfect. Any other questions or comments? All right, moving on. Public safety. Yes, city manager slash.
I've asked Chief Jackson, who's helping me be the interim fire chief, to carry this ball.
Thank you, City Manager Wasden and Mayor and council members. So policy goal 3 is number 3 of 7, is titled Public Safety. And in our plan there's 9 general principles identified in this action plan under this policy goal. And I'll go over those. The first is public safety is a core mission for every department and employee of the City of Turlock. And I think we live that now. We see that with a good example. I see Wayne York was sitting in here, traffic engineering, part of public safety. We already encompass that and believe in that. Number 2 is public safety provides for safety of our citizens and preserves our community and culture. 3, the police and fire departments are traditional leaders in the public safety mission. Their effectiveness is greatly enhanced when all departments work in unison to provide for the safety of our community. And number 4, partnerships with the community are integral to the success of the public safety mission. If you notice, the first 4 are all about partnerships. It's not just the police department and the fire department, it's the city, but it's also the community, and that's important. Number 5 is staffing levels in the police and fire department are critical to effectively accomplish the public safety mission. And 6, the appropriate use of technology is a proven force multiplier. And I think in our notes, Jennifer, we have forced. It should be force multiplier instead of forced. And must be consistently monitored and evaluated. Number 7, effective communication is critical to the ability to respond to emergencies as well as routine public safety needs. And number 8, accurate record keeping and analysis of information is critical to fact-based and effective deployment of resources. And then number 9, I only have 8. Okay. We'll just stop it at 8 then.
You want to add something?
No, we're okay with 8. We'll work on 8. Like the other goals is it's supported by action items, and there's 4 action items identified in the plan to support these principles. The first one is maintain or enhance effective staffing levels. Number 2 is provide police and fire statistics. Number 3 is ensure equipment and infrastructure readiness. And number 4 is develop a response to the Affordable Care Act and partnerships in the medical service delivery community. So that encompasses our public safety portion of it. We can go in further if you wish as far as the actual implementation measures, which is the measurable goals that support the action items, or I can either go into it or you can ask questions if you wish about those.
Any questions or comments for the chief or city manager at that? Anyone for the public? And again, we apologize that this has been up on our website for a while. This is something the council's had for a while to review, and we're trying to put it up here. So this is kind of why things are, we're not skipping over things. We've been reviewing this for months now, I think, since January, iterations, and so that's why. But I think that the 4 action items, I believe there's 4, or there are 8, or are you adding some now? How many do we have?
We're good with 4.
4. I think the 4 are really good, and I think they help us meet our goals for public safety. Any questions or comments? All right, if not, we're moving on to municipal infrastructure. Mr. Cook,
good evening.
Down there.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. So this is a joint effort between Development Services, Parks, Rec, and Public Facilities, as well as the Municipal Services Department. We have 9 general principles under Policy Goal 4, and I'll just kind of summarize those. Basically, the municipal infrastructure is integral to public safety and service delivery. It's critical to retain and attract businesses. Our residents, businesses, and visitors rely on adequate drinking water, wastewater systems, stormwater systems that comply with all state requirements. That our transportation infrastructure needs to be a complete transportation infrastructure that relies on street maintenance, new street construction, non-motorized options, as well as traffic calming in neighborhoods. Principle number 5 discusses well-designed and attractively maintained parks and facilities. Number 6 is regarding our urban forests, particularly our street trees. Number 7 deals with water conservation and drought-tolerant planting. Number 8 is improving the safety and accessibility of the public sidewalk system. And number 9 is for Ms. Helser right here. We're going to update the GIS base map and infrastructure records to reflect accurate asset information. And Ms. Helser is the geography GIS person from the university, so it's very used to be apropos that she's right here. We have, because we're overachievers, we have 23 action items.
Good job, guys.
Between the 3 of us.
I'm sure police will take a couple.
And I won't go through those, but basically deal with water resources, wastewater treatment, street maintenance, street improvements, traffic calming, sidewalks, urban forest, airports, and parks, as well as some of the softer infrastructure items like using technology to improve what we do, like the GIS, like the work order system, as well as our great recreation programs, which build up kind of that human infrastructure in our community. So that kind of summarizes the 23 action items that we're tasked with.
Allison, or Director Van Gilder, can you just highlight, just briefly in a couple of sentences, some of the action items you're looking at? Can you just tell the public about the Vedretti Park lighting upgrades that we've allocated funding for, and different things that tangible infrastructure we're investing in that are good for the community?
Absolutely, Mayor. As you mentioned, we've identified the need to replace and upgrade the existing lighting systems at Vedretti Park, and so Council is committed to that project over the next few years. So hopefully, once the funding is adequate, we will move forward with that project. We are also through this process going to evaluate the feasibility of adding some lighted softball fields to our sports complex in order to expand the use at that facility. Other items that we'll be working on would be some construction projects out at our municipal airport, and that will allow us to gain compliance with widening our existing runway and adding some other necessary infrastructure there. So lots of major construction projects on the horizon to keep Mike and his staff very busy.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Mike.
It works. The Vice Mayor reminded me that, Allison, you're in control of planes, potholes, and parks. And
That's right. You
you.
gave us that slogan. I
Yeah.
like it.
It's good. It's good. All right. Are there any questions or comments from the public or the council on this item? Yes, of course.
I came here to try to get Turlock money, and I don't need money. Money just comes out forever. I was talking about investing money somehow to give you guys the money that you need for Santa Claus County. And what I was suggesting is that you put a condo or some kind of building.
Mrs. Slane? You're Mrs. Slane, correct?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, it's okay. I have your blue card, and we'll get to your comments at public participation. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. Is there any other comments or questions on municipal infrastructure? All the condos could fit in, I guess. So, yes. All right, perfect. We're going to move on to the next item, economic development. Ms. Pitt.
Moving through the pages here.
Yeah.
Oh, good evening, Mayor and Council. Policy number 5 deals with economic development. And in those, under that particular area, we have 5 basic general principles. The first one is to retain, attract, and expand existing businesses, create and retain jobs, support the business community, collaborate with economic development stakeholders, and promote and support tourism. It goes through a myriad of action items, but having to deal with partnerships, developing and maintaining businesships, as well as developing a marketing and branding strategy for the city and the community. But I'm happy to answer any particular questions.
Any questions or comments from the public or the council on this item? No, I think you actually did a very good job. So, not that I'm surprised. I'm just saying it's very straightforward. Are we moving on to number 6, policy goal number 6, intelligent plan managed growth?
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, members of the council. Goal 6, titled Intelligent Plan Management Growth, is comprised of 5 general principles. The first being a well-planned community requires detailed short and long-range planning and implementation that implements the general plan to support development. 2, managed growth requires the development of detailed financial strategies. Third is maintain and build professional working relationships with other agencies to create seamless integration of infrastructure and services throughout the region. 4, while maintaining a high-quality develop regulations and strategies to help make it easier for developers and property owners to meet city's visions and goals. And 5 is develop procedures to make it easier for the community to meet state and federal regulations. There's 13 key action items with these 5 policies, principles. First being prepare and adopt an update to the housing element. Then we're going to prepare and adopt an update to the Northwest Triangle Specific Plan. We're also going to prepare an infield master plan in our county island around Montana and West Avenue. We are going to also prepare and adopt an update to the downtown plan. Working with StanCog in the county and the cities of Patterson, Newman, we're going to complete a feasibility study for the South County corridor connecting State Route 99 to I-5. We're also, and tonight you're going to be taking action on, is the preparation of an active transportation plan focusing on improving community walkability and bikeability. We're going to review and update our capital facilities fees, our specific plan fees, and our master plan fees as needed to make sure they're relevant and also to maintain financial health of those fee programs. We're going to review and update our zoning ordinance to implement the general plan. We're going to update the adopted Parks Master Plan and Fee Nexus study. We're going to work with the Turlock Unified School District to locate a new elementary school in the Morgan Ranch specific plan area. We're also going to prepare a downtown parking plan to identify strategies, infrastructure improvements, and funding to ensure adequate parking in our downtown for today and the future. And that, again, is something that's going to be on your agenda tonight to at least take a look at the first step. Number 12 is purchase software to implement new electronic submittal and plan review processes to streamline project approvals and reduce developer costs. And 13 is develop standard plans and documents to help contractors, homeowners, and businesses comply with state and federal regulations. We have to answer any questions you may have regarding those items.
Great. Any questions or comments for Director Pitcock? All right. No, I very much appreciate it. And then moving on to our last policy goal, quality community programs.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This particular area is definitely a joint effort between our recreation functions and also our housing function. Under our general principles, we have strived to provide affordable recreation opportunities for all, deliver positive recreation programming to deter crime and improve quality of life, focus on partnerships to expand services and the number of citizens served, maximize the use of our sports facilities through tournaments, league play, and special events, offset operational and program costs through fees, grants, sponsorships, and partnerships, and increase the supply of affordable housing for the lowest income households. Some of the action items that we've identified moving into this next year is implement a recreation software program update, preserve existing affordable housing stock, provide housing and services to qualifying populations, and seek out new grant and funding opportunities. Mayor and Council, we look at this area as really your quality of life efforts in terms of reaching out to not only the youth in our community but the low-income populations as well. We take a tremendous amount of pride at being able to deliver services and program opportunities to those populations that need that assistance. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments for Director Van Gilder, the public or the council? All right, thank you all so much. I appreciate you guys working through these this evening. They make it look simple and they make it look easy, but it's been a lot of time that they've taken to go talk to their staff to talk about what's actually feasible, how to accomplish certain goals, and when. I want to thank the city attorney for working on this as well. We looked at it through the legal lens, but she also rolled up her sleeves and put a couple other hats on too to look at it with a different set of eyes. So that's good. Thank you. And City Manager, thank you for taking the lead on this and making this very practical and digestible and something that we can really obtain and we'll know where we are at any given point throughout the next 4 years. As you know, within this, we will be adopting this if we do go with the motion, but to look at it again in 2 years or roughly 2 years after the next election cycle. We do want to acknowledge that there will be potentially 2 new members on this council that will have different sets of goals or would like to come in and add in their goals and vision for the city, and we need to have that open dialogue with those potentially new members or the current members or whatever it might be. So that is also built in. So with that, I'll bring it back to the council for whatever they'd like to do. Yes, Vice Mayor.
As well as thanking everyone that participated, that we had a lot of public forums, and so people came in and gave us some of their views, which is important, and there's a lot of people here today that have views, and we want you to keep coming and telling us. It's the only way we can help you guys have the best quality of life out there is for you to tell us what's going on. And with that, I'd like to introduce the motion.
So we have a motion by Councilmember Vice Mayor Butblock, second by Councilmember DeHart, with the one minor edit from the police chief, if that's okay with you all, that it's a force multiplier, not forced. Are you okay with that? Changing it? That's the one edit we caught? We're okay with All right, so we have a motion by Vice Mayor Bublock, second by Councilmember. Yes.
Now, we were going to adopt language to track PERS and bonds also. Is that included in this motion?
In all honesty, I think that as is, I was re-looking through this. I think the debt repayment and tracking of PERS is addressed with the goal of adopting a balanced budget. That is obviously part of that, so I think that we're sufficient there.
We'll just cover it under that.
I think so. So with that, we have the motion to accept by the Vice Mayor, seconded by Councilmember DeHart. Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, motion carries 5-0. Let's give our really great staff a round of applause for all the hard work on this. I very much appreciate it. So now I will close that special meeting, and I know that all of you are here for the bicycle, some bicycle stuff, or at least you like bicycles on your T-shirts. Bear with me give me 7 minutes, okay? Because we're going to go through the successor agency quickly, and then we'll get to you. If that's okay. I apologize. There's some cookies outside, too, if you'd like. All right, I'm going to call to order I already called to order the successor agency. I'll move to citizen participation. This is a time set aside directly for issues directly addressing the successor agency to the Turlock Redevelopment Agency. So seeing none, I will close citizen participation. Declaration of conflicts of interest and disqualifications. Looking at my fellow agency members, seeing none. Moving on to consent calendar. What's the pleasure of the commission? Is that what we are? We're a commission? Successor agency? We have a motion by agency member Jacob, seconded by agency member Bublock to accept the consent calendar as is. Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, motion carries 5-0. Moving on to public hearings, we have none. Moving on to scheduled matters, a request to approve a recognized obligation payment schedule for January to June 2016, ROPS 15-16B, pursuant to Health and Safety Code Section 34177, and taking certain actions in connection therewith.
Mayor?
Yes, City Manager. I don't know who's taking this.
This is curveball. Marie thinks this isn't coming up for a minute, so we can probably just, she thought it was going to come up at the end, so she's downstairs working at her desk.
Absolutely. All right.
If we want to take a brief recess, I can get her up here, or I can take a shot
well,
at
absolutely.
covering this.
If I'm looking at the city attorney, because I've opened all three meetings simultaneously, can we bounce back to public participation? Bikes, see, I take care of you guys. And I say, so Marie can come up when she can, and we'll jump back to that item without obligations without objections from the rest of the council.
Oh, there's Marie.
Oh, Marie, bikes, stay put, stay put. Come on up, Marie. We hit your item. This is what happens when you open 3 different meetings at the same time. You never know what's going to happen.
Good thing I was listening down at my desk.
You ran up here. Awesome.
Thought I'd have more time to get some work done.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
No problem. I'm assuming we have the ROPS before council at
Yes.
this point? Okay. Okay, the item before the successor agency at this point is the 9th installment of our recognized obligations payment schedule. The obligations for the successor agency are slowly winding down. What's before you tonight is essentially the debt service for the former redevelopment agency's 3 outstanding bonds, as well as payments on a few projects the successor agency is carrying out that the redevelopment agency had been doing, including the mobile home subsidies for income-eligible tenants at the mobile home park, and the loan agreements that the successor agency and the oversight board approved at their last time a ROPS was before you, to which DOF did approve, to recover funds that DOF had not allowed the successor agency to include on a ROPS in a prior period. So we're like I said, winding down the debt payments that we're making. The big issue that's going to be before the oversight board and DOF on this one is the Avena Bella project. That project is getting to the point where it's going to be going to the tax credit allocation committee to apply for tax credit allocations. Hopefully they'll be awarded when they do the terms of the DDA will essentially be enforced so that the agency can extend funds to the project as part of the local match or local funding for the project. It's important to have the local money in there because it increases the potential score in order to get those tax credits. So we'll be working with DOF should they have any concerns on having that agreement on the TROPS. And with that, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Do we have any questions or comments for Marie at this time? Yes, Councilman Nascimento.
Just a comment. I wanted to acknowledge Marie, the city manager, and Marin for their tenacity in working with the Department of Finance. Some of the items listed on our original ROPS that were denied, and they fought the good fight and didn't let up, and it led to hundreds of thousands of dollars of money coming back to the successor agency that was originally denied. And so thank you guys for your tenacity and sticking with it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Questions or comments from the council? Now I'll open it up for public comment. Anyone from the public? All right. If not, I'll bring it back to the council. What's the pleasure of the council?
Introduce the resolution.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Bublak, Agency Member Bublak, seconded by Agency Member DeHart. Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, just so that you folks know, this will go to the Oversight Board next Monday, assuming that they approve what you forwarded to them. It'll go to DOF, and then we'll start the 45-day review period and see what they have to say this time around. So
Perfect.
we'll
Thank
let you know if anything changes.
Thanks so much, Marie.
Sure.
Perfect. All right. Moving on. There's no closed session items for the agency, and so I'll just go ahead and adjourn. Do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Second.
So a motion by Agency Member Bublak, seconded by Agency Member DeHart. Clerk, please call the roll. It didn't have to.
Yes.
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 Yes. Motion to adjourn the agency successor agency is approved. All right. Moving on to our regularly scheduled program. We're going to do proclamations here. So with the Manufacturing Awareness and Appreciation Month, Jennifer Carlson, will you join me at the microphone? Bye, 'cause I have a couple more minutes. Thank you all for bearing with us. We're going to go through a few proclamations and presentations, if that's okay. But the Manufacturers Council is a great council. You guys do great work, and it's an honor for me to present this proclamation in recognition of the Manufacturing Awareness and Appreciation Month of this October. So whereas Manufacturing Day is nationally celebrated on the first Friday of the month of October to showcase manufacturers and increase awareness of manufacturing careers, and whereas manufacturing jobs are critical to the economy and provide living wages with long-term career opportunities, and whereas the manufacturing sector includes food processing, milk processing, beverage manufacturing, nut processing, paper products, food packaging, plastic products, and steel products, and whereas increasing awareness and opportunities among students, parents, and the community of local manufacturing careers is essential to encouraging manufacturing pathways, and whereas coordinated and aligned efforts of public, private, and nonprofit organizations is needed to collectively address the challenges of the skilled labor shortage, and whereas by working together with manufacturers, the Educational System, Workforce Investment Board, Economic Development Corporation, Chambers of Commerce, and other public and private organizations, the skilled labor shortage for short-term can be solved, and long-term solutions can be developed. And whereas showcasing the regional commitment to manufacturing in the San Joaquin Valley will encourage local expansion and attraction from other markets, now therefore I, Gary Soyseth, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Turlock, and on behalf of all our citizens, do hereby proclaim October 2015 as Manufacturing Awareness and Appreciation Month, and encourage our communities and manufacturers to work collaboratively with the San Joaquin Valley Manufacturing Cluster in creating a world-class career technical education ecosystem to support and grow the manufacturing sector. Congratulations.
That was a mouthful. So congratulations to you for getting through all that. But thank you, Mayor and City Council members, and Mr. Wasden, Ms. Norton. Thank you so much for having me here this evening. It's truly an honor to accept this proclamation. Ag manufacturing is majority of the manufacturing that happens here in Turlock. And ag manufacturing is a natural complement to our agricultural heritage here in the valley. It's also a very important economic factor here in our valley, our region, our county, and here in our city. Turlock is home to many world-class manufacturing companies, as you know. We have Sensient, Superb Farms, Foster Farms, Blue Diamond, I'm missing several, Cozy Shack, but we could go on and on. There's several of them here. And they're very important to the economy here in the city. And it's companies like these that actually provide and are responsible for 33% of the city of Turlock's employment. I mean, that's big. That's huge. And so they're a very important piece to the city for sure. And when I talk about employment, I'm talking about not these, minimum wage positions. We're talking about high wage jobs that these companies provide. We're talking about engineering, your maintenance mechanics, your electricians, your laboratory scientists. There are a variety of fields that these people employ. And so it's important for the community to know that they don't have to go to the Bay Area to get jobs like that. They can stay right here in their own backyard. And Turlock is the heart of our ag manufacturing sector here in the valley. And, this is where we know how to grow and prepare food for the entire world to consume. Right. So on behalf of all of those companies, again, I'm very honored to accept this proclamation declaring October as Manufacturing, Awareness Appreciation Month. And if I could just add, thank you so much to the City of Turlock. You've always been a big supporter of manufacturing, and like what your strategic plan said today, you always are in the forefront and setting policy to make sure that you have the appropriate infrastructure available to support the industry. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much. We, in all we do, we try and keep our manufacturers in the forefront, whether it's even talking to the water board about restrictions on our water use and explaining to them the nuances of how our industries are comprised and what they need. So we appreciate what you do up there in that town to the north, and we appreciate the love you give us down here in Turlock. So with that, a good friend of mine, Todd Smith, are you here? Where did I see Todd? Oh, Allison, are you giving the presentation? All right. The Young Eagles event that's going to be held out at the Turlock Regional Aviation Association's the airport. So I'm very excited about this. I think I'll be out there.
Good evening, Mayor and Council and community. If you happen to be between the ages of 8 and 17, you definitely want to listen to this. Or if you happen to have a young person in your life, we have an exciting event that we're going to be offering at our airport this weekend. Yes, Turlock has an airport. It's no, it's not. Thank you. That was perfect. That was perfect. No, it's not in Turlock. It's located in Balico. It's a long story. We can chat after the meeting. The address of our airport is 13604 Newport Road in Balico. It's actually way out East Avenue, the corner of East Avenue and Newport Road. It's a fabulous facility in that the city works through a partnership with our Turlock Regional Aviation Association. They're a nonprofit volunteer group that manage the airport for the community, essentially. And so one of the ways that we try to create awareness and invite people out to the facility is through our Young Eagles Day. And so through a partnership with EAA, we have volunteer pilots that come to the airport on Saturday between 8:30 and 4 o'clock, and they offer free flights to young people in the community. And so this is a tremendous opportunity, particularly for young people who may not get the opportunity to experience aviation. And so I encourage you, if you have a young person in your life who has an interest in this, it's a fabulous day. They get to come out. They get to spend one-on-one time with the pilot, and it's just a great event. And so, again, it's this Saturday, the 26th, between 8:30 and 4 out at the airport. There will also be vendors there and lots of activities for the youth to participate in. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. You might be slightly outside of that age group. Sorry. Yeah.
We'll talk.
All right. Perfect. I don't know why I'm doing proclamations and presentations from the podium tonight, but Jessica's house, Erin Nelson, she presented already, so we're going to skip over item C. Now I'll bring up the Stanislaus Innovation Challenge by Curtis Clark, Director of Alliance Small Business Development Center. I'll actually return my seat for this one. Okay, great. I don't know what's going on.
Thank you, Mayor, council members, staff, and community. I appreciate the opportunity to be here once again, in the beautiful city of Turlock, one of my favorite places to visit. I'm a resident. My name is Kurt Clark, Director of the Alliance Small Business Development Center, actually a resident of Waterford and native of Stanislaus County, born and raised in Oakdale. That's enough about me. So let's talk about what really excites me, and that is helping the small business community grow and develop and see our smaller employers really prosper throughout our county. The Alliance SBDC is an SBA-funded program. There are about 1,100 small business development centers across the United States, all funded by the SBA, all independent. Collectively, they serve about 400,000 small businesses a year with no-cost business counseling services. Here at the Alliance SBDC, I've been the director for 12 years. When I started, we had 3 professional consultants. We now have 37 professional consultants under contract. Our program continues to grow. We've recently received a grant from the state of California to continue to serve our local small business community. So that is the good news. I also want to add just a couple of facts about our services in the Turlock area. From 2012 to 2014, so a full 3-year calendar year, we assisted 185 individual clients just in the city of Turlock. And we provided about 1,120 hours of no-cost professional consulting. So a lot of services going into the community. So what did that get you, or what did that service? How did those services provide any kind of benefit? We had 18 new businesses start throughout those 185 clients, and that's pretty typical. About 10% of our clients go into business. Only about 40% of the people we serve are pre-venture or not yet in business. So also 21 jobs were created in that group. And the 185 clients we served, there was a group of them that received funding through our assistance that totaled $2.4 million. So it's pretty substantial, and it was a challenging time to provide those services. So far this year, we don't have full data yet because the year is still in progress, but so far we've served 71 individuals in the city of Turlock, provided over 200 hours of no-cost counseling. We know of, when we're still counting, but we know one new business started. And the good news is in our existing employers, which now constitute about 60% of our clients, we've seen 13 new jobs created. So it doesn't sound like a huge impact, but the economy is definitely improving, and we're seeing lots more business starts, and we're seeing more young startup businesses and early-stage businesses expanding and adding employees. The main reason I was here, which when I got put on the calendar, was we wanted to come and talk about our Innovation Challenge. And I want to end my comments with the Stanislaus Innovation Challenge. This is our 2nd year of the challenge. It is kind of like Shark Tank meets American Idol. We want to encourage inventors, people with great ideas, people who think they have a great idea but not sure if it is viable or possible, to bring it into a full-fledged business. We want to encourage you to join the challenge. Fill out an application. You can do so on our website, alliancesbdc.com. On the homepage, there's a button there to click on the application. It's open to residents of Stanislaus County, students, and anyone who owns a business in Stanislaus County. And there's 3 more challenges. We've had 3. We've had events in Modesto, Patterson, and just last week in Riverbank. We have an event coming up in 2 weeks in Ceres, and one in Oakdale 3 weeks after that. And the final of the 6 events this year will be here in Turlock out at the campus. So the College of Business Administration at CSU is a co-sponsor of the event, and we have a room that will hold 200 people, so we would love to see a lot of attendance. It's going to be at the, if I can pronounce it correctly, DiMergasso Baba Hall, and it is going to be in room 130, MSR 130. So 2 things. One, if you know anybody who is an inventor and who wants the opportunity to compete for $5,000 in cash and $3,000 in professional services from attorneys, CPAs, marketing experts, I encourage them or you to enter the competition, and we'd love to see you come and pitch your idea at our event, whether it's upcoming in series. There's still time. Cutoff date for series is actually tomorrow, midnight tomorrow. Oakdale will be 3 weeks from tomorrow, and then Turlock you have 6 weeks to get your application in for the Turlock event. So thank you very much. Any questions you have for?
Any questions or comments? No. Thank you so much.
Thank
Oh,
you.
yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
That is a very good question. The information I've gotten from campus is that it is in the DBH, but the room number that I got emailed to me from campus staff was MSR 130. So if that's a different location, I need to...
Will there be signs and postings?
Oh, there will be.
Okay.
And forget I said anything about MSR 130. I know for sure it's in the DBH building. So, and then we will send out additional information. If you can get a hold of me by just going to our website. My email address is on there. Thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right. We're going to move on to special briefings. We have none. I'm going to ask staff updates to wait until after public participation because I promised the bikes 7 minutes ago. I think it was more than 7 minutes ago to come on up. So we're going to open public participation now at this time. It's time set aside for members of the public to directly address the council on any item of interest to the public. As a note for some of the bicyclists, the active transportation plan is later on, so you can comment then or you can comment now, but I'll let you take it away. Elizabeth. You want to wait for that? Absolutely, it is, of course. So Elizabeth's going to wait. Is there anyone else that would like to comment now that needs to leave? Okay, perfect. So then we're going to work with Mr. Hoax, Peter Hoax. Come on up. Thank you so much for your patience. We appreciate it.
Thank God I didn't need to bring any telephone book to stand on. All right. Yeah, my name is Peter Hooks. I reside at 3141 Paseo Entrada. And today, Atherstone Road, if you guys know where that is, it connects Paseo Entrada to Golden State Boulevard. Okay, that street has been in existence, I think, 6 or 7 years. Not a single pothole, not a single crack. Yet today, they resurfaced it. Now, I found out from the people here at City Hall that this is being paid for by assessment district fund. But to me, that's still spending money that didn't need to be. I know better things to do with that money if I had a choice. So the thing that I would like to see is since Paseo Entrada is like a speedway for a lot of people in the morning going to Pittman, and on the weekend going to the sports center, and in the afternoon from Pittman down back to Calaveras. I'd like to get a couple of speed bumps in there. The higher the better. Okay. But the main one would be a speed bump coming from Atherton, from Golden State towards Paseo Entrada, right on the corner by the stop sign. For Chief Jackson, that would be a gold mine for the city if you had a cop down there. So, but yeah, a lot of times I'll be up front in the yard, and I'll see people coming from Calaveras. Apparently, don't have any brakes on their truck or cars, and they go in 40, 50 miles an hour straight into Paseo Entrada, which is a 25-mile zone. And we have quite a few kids down there that walk to school and all that. So, and in the afternoon, the same way. It's coming from Pittman. I don't say it's all students, because I've seen some older people too that don't know what STOP means. Okay, so anyway, a couple of speed bumps there would be real well spent if we could have the funds from that assessment district. And I understand that's from the area where I live. So part of my money would go into that also. So, and if they have so much money that they can waste it, why not lower the taxes on that?
All right, well,
Very
thank you.
simple.
Thank you so much. I'm going to ask Director Pitcock if you can meet up a little bit afterwards and explain a little bit more about the prioritization of projects within assessment districts and who funds that, and that'd be great. Thank you so much for coming. Absolutely. Don't promise speed bumps just yet, please.
You might want to stick around for item 8B. We're going to be talking about traffic calming measures, so it's on the agenda.
So, Mrs. Slane, Carol? Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much for your patience. I know you were speaking earlier, but... Perfect. Absolutely. You can step up to the microphone. Absolutely. Hold on just one.
Anyway, I'm the San Jose Fire Department, and I'm the police department, and Officer White is my friend. I am the informant, and I want the ham center closed because all they did to me was make me go without shoes for 8 days because they said I wasn't homeless, and I'm homeless until I get my housing. And all the people that do the drugs are stealing everything from me every day. And Officer White said, "Stay out of the businesses." Well, I go buy a cigar at the cigar shop. I sit down and I look this way. That way, the cigar's gone. And so, what it is I would like to see you put it in some children's park, take away the air somehow because of the, the drugs. And there's just too much drugs. And they were making bombs on the railroad tracks, and I caught them. And so, anyway, I got to calm down. And so I want you to build a park to make your money with a real carousel. They did it in San Jose. You can do it too. And I also did go to City Hall in 2006, and the sheriffs got rid of the drugs and the bus benches because somebody murdered somebody over class. The gangsters are out here doing up to no good. People are stealing everybody's bicycles. We're a dime bag. So anyway, a water park with water, something for old people and young people, but basically a park for 0 to 6-year-olds. Somewhere in Turlock.
Perfect.
With little pony rides. And public bathrooms that they have in San Jose, you can make a lot of money off of them.
All right.
There's a couple of them at certain places. Public bathrooms and a couple of mounties. 2 horses. One goes that way, one goes the other way.
All right.
That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mrs. Slane.
Tell everybody good night.
All right. Good night, Mrs. Slane. Thank you. All right. I have a, sorry, I can't read this. Mr. Ragsdale? Kelvin? Oh, perfect. It's still better handwriting than mine, trust me.
Well,
So.
that's as good as I can get.
Yeah, just- Okay. Perfect. Thank you so much, Ms. Slane. Thank you. Thank you. All right, Mr. Ragsdale.
My name is Kelvin Jasek Rizdal.
Oh, Ragsdale's not
very
what it was.
close, though. Yeah.
Sorry. Thanks, Kevin.
I'm a board member of We Care Turlock, and so I'm here to talk about a number of things. We house people. We have a emergency cold weather shelter for men. We have year-round transitional housing. And in a partnership with the city, we're about to be able to offer long-term low-income housing. And hopefully you've received your invitations to our open house on October 8th. I think I provided some of those. We hope to see you there. We're really excited about that partnership on Lambert. Also want to just let people know that the shelter is going to be opening this year at November 1st. And people who are interested in volunteering and providing meals, you can go to www.wecareturlock.org and sign up. The calendar is up and available for people to sign up for meals. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to address the council at this time? Seeing none, I'll close public participation, and we're going to move back up to staff updates, moving to median landscape and assessment districts and water conservation impacts by Mr. Schultz. Hey, Eric.
Mayor and Council, I just wanted to kind of give you an update on what happened during this summer with water conservation, and some of the things that we've seen around town. The biggest thing that we saw was the fact that we had 2 pumps go down in the northeast area in early June. The effect of that was the irrigation system for all the northeast area. We had about 1,250 trees that were affected in that area, that along with hundreds of shrubs and plants. And that was pretty devastating to the landscape in that area. Along with that, with the water restrictions that we saw, we had a couple medians that were live turf. And to keep the trees alive in those areas, we deployed a water truck that you guys saw probably. We had a 2,000-gallon water truck that we used 40 hours a week that we used to help water those trees after we had to cut the water off to the live turf. And with the myriad of all these things going on at the same time, we really saw a big decline in the northeast area. We heard from a lot of the property owners in the area about the decline, the landscape, and there were a lot of questions. And I think we just want to make it clear that we didn't have a lack of staffing out there. We just really had a redeployment of staff. You'd see the maintenance staff out there. They had to do a lot of hand watering to keep the trees alive out there. We deployed the 2,000-gallon water truck. We also had 2 trucks that were outfitted with 300-gallon tanks that we used to hand water the trees in the area. The hardest hit that you saw was definitely in the basins in the north and the south. We had multiple dead trees out there. We had about 15 in each one of those basins. Along with that, we had probably another 100 that were highly stressed. Throughout the city, we maintain about 20,000 trees that the city maintains. And of that, on an annual basis, we turn over about 1% of those annually that die for one reason or another, and they get replaced. This year, because of the drought and because of the lack of water that we had for a period of time over in the Northeast Basin, we're looking at, currently we have about 116 trees that have died in that area, and that's strictly in the Northeast area, and that's attributed to the wells. And in our parks, we had about 31. Petrati Park saw 22 trees die, and those were redwoods that we're pretty sure because of the salination in the water that we're using for the recycled water out there. One of the things that we're doing and that you're going to see, you'll see a massive replanting coming up. We started that effort about 2 weeks ago, and we estimate by the end of October we will have replaced all the trees that have died in the northeast area. We also have a couple projects that we're looking at where you'll see the live turf medians, the one on Monte Vista near Gear, and also the median on Christofferson, their live turf. We received a grant from Cal Recycle for $150,000, and we're going to use that for rubber bark, and we're going to start that project on the Monte Vista median. We're going to remove that turf, and we're going to fill that in with rubber bark. That'll help us next year as we start to conserve water and free up our water trucks so that we're not hand watering those trees. And then we're going to carry that over to the Christofferson median, much larger median. We're hoping that we'll have leftover material from the Monte Vista project, and if we do, we'll amend the grant, and we'll start applying that material starting on the south end and working towards Golden State. And progressively, you'll see over the next year us going through that median and replacing that live turf with some other material, rubber bark, regular bark, just as a measure because we know as the drought continues that we won't be able to continue to water those live turf medians. And also it'll free up our staff when we're working through the trees in that area. And just some numbers to throw out there. In 2012, we lost 93 trees. 2013, 95 trees. 2014, 93. So you see it's pretty consistent as to how many trees we lose on an annual basis. And so this year, like I said, we're looking at probably more than double that. I told you the number of trees that we had down in the northeast area, but we probably have another 300 or 400 that are severely stressed in that area that we'll be looking at. The good news is we've seen a lot of them come back. If you drive back through that northeast area, go into the basins, you'll see what was in June and July just really dead vegetation. You'll see a lot of that's come back. And along with that, a lot of the trees have also been able to come back. So we're hoping, we're continuing to monitor those trees, and that's our number one priority as we move through this drought, is to protect the urban forest here in town. And so you'll see us letting those trees go as long as we can with hopes that they're going to come back. And at this point, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments for Eric? No, but I think that something you mentioned earlier throughout the presentation should be highlighted, is that it wasn't the city of Turlock that just arbitrarily decided to shut off water to our medians. With the governor's executive order about this drought, there were a lot of restrictions placed on cities, and we complied with them, and we had to do triage. We had to see how were we going to comply with the regulations but also keep our trees alive. And to be honest, I know that these numbers are not what we like to see. You guys did a great job, and you worked your tails off to try and make sure we kept as many trees alive. And even if they're stressed, we're trying to bring them back. So I really am impressed by the whole organization stepping up to deal with this drought.
I appreciate that, and the maintenance staff did work very hard to maintain those trees. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. All right, seeing none, I will ask Ms. Packwood. Mrs. Packwood, aquatic season update. This is one of my favorite reports.
Good. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight and speak to you regarding our aquatic season. One would think that with how hot it is outside that it's still summer, but we're quickly ending September and approaching October. But we had a wonderful summer. This year was very busy. This year we operated programs at Turlock High School, Pittman High School, and Columbia, as we have in the past. However, this summer we did have to change our scheduling a little bit as Turlock Unified changed their school schedule, which forced us to change our programming. It affected our swim lesson numbers a little bit. Typically, at our pools, we offer 4 sessions of swim lessons. This year we had to only offer 3 because the kids went back to school earlier, but we still were able to serve 1,128 students in swim lessons this year. Those students range in age from 6 months all the way up to adults. We have a lot of adults that are interested in learning how to swim. And so we are increasing our classes that we offer for adults because they're wanting to set that example for their children. Our rec swim numbers this year were up from last year, and we have had approximately 15,000 rec swim students come through at the 3 pools combined. Eric didn't mention it with the drought, but because of the drought, our water parks, we did have to adjust the hours of operations for our water parks. And with that adjustment, we made sure that in the water park adjustment that our rec swim was still going to be open during that time. And so we think that our numbers increased because of that. We also work closely with TID. They were not able to be here tonight, but we have a sponsorship program with them. So every year they give their agencies within their service area pool passes that we distribute. This program started in 2008. This year, TID distributed to those agencies 8,300 pool passes. They had a return with all of the agencies combined of 3,500 pool passes. We, City of Turlock, we had 984 pool passes from TID alone that were redeemed with us. So what we did, we gave them to police officers, our maintenance staff, we had them at our counters, PD had them at their counters to make sure that the cost wasn't a factor in children swimming at the pool. In addition to that, we also had our Police Activities League that was a big sponsor of our recreation swim at all 3 facilities this year as well. They also sponsored our Marty Yerby Summer Camp as well as our Rec on Wheels program, so we're really appreciative of them for that. We also worked with TAPO. As well as the 2030 Club, they purchased pool passes as well. So there's a lot of agencies that want to make sure that the cost is not a factor in kids not swimming. It's also important that I recognize Turlock Unified School District. They are a big factor with us having a successful swim program in addition to other programs that we offer, which was part of the strategic plan partnerships. So we work very closely with our school district every year. And I would like to also thank the community for your continued support of the Recreation Department on all levels. It's also a great time for me to let you guys know, mark your calendars, because as summer ends.
Wait, is this on the agenda? Because if it's not, I don't think so. All right, yeah, we'll let you go. We'll let you
Friday,
slide.
December 4th, mark your calendars for the 37th Annual Christmas Parade.
Shameless. Shameless.
So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
What was that date again?
Friday, December 4th,
You almost got it.
6:30 p.m.
Got it.
Carrie, just quickly, I noticed this year we were looking to sign up our son for swimming lessons. There wasn't any available in the evenings for like the Mommy and Me classes. Is that typical, or is that something next year we might have evening classes? Because I know it's hard for working moms to,
Absolutely.
do those during the day.
So we offer swim lessons morning and afternoon evening classes. At both Pittman and Turlock High Pools, we share pool space with the swim clubs. There's Turlock Aquatic Club as well as Turlock Sea Dogs. And so with the Mommy Me, the shallow end is prime area, and we try to maximize our space with all of the classes, and the classes fill really fast. We can only offer as many classes as we have space for. The hope is that we can continue to evolve, and we had a conversation just yesterday with Stanislaus State University as they are in the process of redoing their pool. So that conversation is about to begin. Yes?
Any other questions or comments for Karen? No, but again, your aquatic staff, lifeguards, the concessionaires, everyone that works really hard for the aquatics program, all the way up to even you, did an excellent job. You guys all did great. So as a former employee of yours, Karen, you guys continue to do great stuff. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Is that it? No other plugs for any other events?
Not
all right.
tonight.
Thank you so much. Perfect. So we're going to be skipping public participation because we already got there. So we're moving to a motion waiving reading of all ordinances on the agenda except by title. I have a motion by Councilmember Nascimento, seconded by Councilmember DeHart. Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, motion carries 5-0. Declaration of conflicts of interest and disqualifications. Looking left, looking right, seeing none. Moving to consent calendar. What's the pleasure of the council?
Motion accept.
Second.
So we have a motion by Vice Mayor Bublock, seconded by Councilmember DeHart to approve the consent calendar as is. Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to final readings. Moving on to the ordinance. Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, motion carries 5-0. All right, on to public hearings. Moving on to item 7A. Sorry, there's a resolution. I apologize. What do we want to do with the resolution, Council? Or Clerk, please call the roll. Can I have an introduction? Do I have a second?
Second.
So we have a motion by Councilmember Nascimento, second by Vice Mayor Bublock to approve the resolution establishing conditions of approval for plan development. Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, resolution passes 5-0. See, you bicyclists, I'm trying to get to your item as fast as possible. This is what happens. Moving on to item 7A, we do have a green sheet, which means that there's some information that's been added to the agenda item. 7A, request to determine the adoption of the General Plan Amendment 2015-02. I will have Debbie explain it. Instead of reading, usually I read it verbatim, but I'll let you go for it.
Thank you, Mayor, staff, members of the council. Luckily, I have a consultant here that's going to really explain it to you, so that's always very helpful. As you can see, we have a lot of interest in this item with the gray and the orange shirts that are in the audience. This has been a project that's been well attended in terms of the participation during its development, and our consultant is going to go through and provide those recommendations to you. I'm very privileged to be able to present this item, but I do want to say I can't really take credit for all the effort that went into it. I want to acknowledge the two staff members here at the city who participated in developing this plan. First is Wayne York, who is in the audience, and he's going to give you a brief overview of a couple of projects that the city is moving forward with that were directly recommended as part of this active transportation plan. And he spent a lot of time working on this project. He really actually initiated this effort by obtaining the local transportation funds from the Stanislaus Council of Governments in order for us to secure the consultant assistance to prepare the plan. So I really appreciate all the work that he's done, and he's going to continue to do this because he's really the implementing arm of the active transportation plan and making those projects happen. The other person, and I'm not sure if she's in the audience, is Rose Stillo, who is a senior planner on the planning division staff. She was the project manager for the active transportation plan, put a lot of hours in working with the community and preparing this plan and really making sure that the recommendations not only made sense but actually augmented what we had already done as part of the general plan. So with that, I'm going to introduce our consultant team. We have John Leeswin with Alta Planning, and we also have Marty Inouye with OmniMeans. They're going to go through and actually explain the active transportation plan to you and what is recommended. As I mentioned, Wayne York is going to give you a brief overview of a couple of the projects that have actually been developed as part of this active transportation plan, and then I'll kind of wind it up by coming back to the actions for you. Okay, with that, I'm going to turn it over to John.
Thank you, Debbie, Mayor, council members, and members of the public. I'm very pleased to be here to tell you a little bit more about this plan, which started at the beginning of 2014. Can you all hear me okay? There we go. So Debbie did a great job of introducing the team. I want to thank Marty and OmniMeans, our partners, consultant team partners. It was really a good match because Alta Planning and Design, we work around the country, and we tend to come in with a kind of a visionary, but we try to be as pragmatic as possible, realizing there's a wide range of what people and communities can do. We were so inspired by this community. It really helped also having a local engineer who's been working in your community for a long time to help ground us in reality and say, look, there's a long way to go here. Let's see what are the low-hanging fruit, what we can get on the ground quickly. So it was a good team. So the presentation tonight will cover these four things, in particular the first three, and then I'll open it up for your questions. So the plan development was about a 1 year and 9 months project. In 2014, we started with data collection, a survey of the public, our first public outreach meetings, determining what the existing conditions were, gathering data from the American Community Survey, comparing Turlock to other peer cities, and then developing a needs assessment based on a gap analysis. Through this year, we started developing the projects and putting the plan together. And then recently we went to the Planning Commission and obtained their input and approval. So we had a citizens advisory team, and they met 4 times. There's the full list there. But in particular, I want to thank Elizabeth and John. They were really a driving force in helping contribute to this plan. They were out there getting volunteers to do counts, and the plan is so much better for the enthusiasm that they put into it. Rose Stillo, of course, you've already heard, she was a key member of the city staff, but also Wayne, who did a lot of work to take on board what the community was telling us and come up with some early wins. So the plan structure is in 7 volumes, as you can see here. The main plan as a strategic document is in Volume 1. Volume 2 is split out because it's 11 by 17 landscape, so for those of you who are printing it out, it was easier to split it out into a separate document. That includes project sheets that were identified in the needs assessment and from the general plan. Volume 3 is the appendices. That's really more detail, but there's one particular item in the appendices that I'd like you all to take a look at, and that's the bike rodeos. That was really fun. We went to 4 schools that were geographically dispersed throughout your community, and it was building on a previous pilot project that one of your bike shops and the police did, and we built on that and really brought the best practices to town and developed a how-to manual for doing bike rodeos. What is a bike rodeo? Basically, it's helping teach kids how to ride more safely to school and for recreation and transportation purposes. So we cover all the basics, like how to fit a helmet, but also how to stop, start, signal, and how to navigate the roads. It's just a primer, so really it still depends upon more advanced training when they get older and can ride more vehicularly in traffic, and depends upon parents to still train them, but it's a good start. Volume 4 is the Safe Routes to School report. We, together with OmniMeans staff and engineers, we went to 11 schools around your community, audited them for infrastructure improvements that could be made, and later on we synced those up with the recommendations of the overall plan. And then the Safe Routes to School maps in Volume 5, those are large format, 11 by 17s again. We vetted those with the school district, and what they serve to do is help identify which streets are priorities for maintaining good quality walking and cycling infrastructure and potentially improving it. So they're the real arterials, if you will, leading in and out of your schools. The design toolkit in Volume 6 is it's a beautiful document, if I don't say so myself, but it's really intended to take the thousands of pages of this really dry highway design manual of uniform traffic control devices, and make it something more accessible for members of the public, planning staff, and to say, right, these are the things that you could do. Of course, you've also got your street design standards. So it's just a toolkit, it's a guide, but it helps say, well, these are the latest cutting-edge things that are coming down all the way from FHWA through the Institute of Traffic Engineers and the Green Book and all those other guidelines, and showing the direction of where Caltrans is going to be allowing us to go for better, more innovative facilities. And the last item is a pamphlet. We printed, Debbie, 100 of them? They're basically focused on businesses, but they're really for anyone. They're programmatic ideas. They're not infrastructure as much as ideas for how we can promote more walking and cycling for employees of businesses, visitors to those businesses, and the business owners themselves. So I encourage you all to pick up a copy of that. It's also available on bikewalkturlock.com if you want to look at the PDF. So why did we do this? First of all, more walking and bicycling helps put more eyes on the street. We all know what it's like to drive around our community. We're in a box, we're traveling at a good rate of speed, and we just don't interact as much with other members of the community. When you're walking and cycling and you see your neighbor, it's an opportunity to stop and talk, and it builds community. Why else? Air quality. The more walking and cycling, the fewer trips there are. We did some quantitative analysis and estimates. You're looking at roughly 400,000 miles a year of reduced travel if we can bump up just a slight amount. If we can move into what our peer cities are at, like another 1 to 2% bump, we can really remove a lot of travel from our roads. The more walking and cycling, the less air pollution. Why else should we do walking and cycling? It's not just about recreation. There are members of your community, about 7% according to the American Community Survey, who have no car. So they're getting around by transit, but transit doesn't always serve all of our needs. Walking and cycling are important parts of that mix. And there are about a third of your community only has one car in the household. So that means that if the primary breadwinner is using the car, that there are other members of the household that need to get around, so walking and cycling can serve them too. Why else? It's to be consistent with federal, state, regional, and local policies. So part of what you see in the appendices is a detailed breakdown of all of the policy goals and really that informed this plan. In particular, the general plan was very important, your downtown design guidelines, and the STANCOG non-motorized transportation plan. We looked at all of those. So where are we at right now? The existing conditions, based on the American Community Survey, this is the non-car, non-single occupant vehicle travel. So roughly 80-90%, I guess, if we total that up, is single occupant vehicle. But from those who are not driving alone, this is the mix right now. If you put together the walk and bike, a little less than 3%, that's comparable, slightly lower than some of your peer cities, slightly better than others. But communities like Modesto are making a big push towards improving walking and cycling. And now with this plan and the enthusiasm I see in this room and amongst staff, I think that we can show them up and really bump those bike walk figures up more. So when you update this plan, it'll be really interesting to see what the progress is and see what our target can be. So we looked also at safety, and we cross-referenced reported collisions against things like speed limits, number of lanes, and what we could see is that higher speed roads with more lanes did have a higher crash frequency. It's important to note that this is just reported collisions, and there are many incidents between bicyclists and motorists and pedestrians and motorists that go unreported, so it's just an indicative tool. So this is where Elizabeth and the volunteers really stepped it up. The numbers you see there are the peak hour, which may be morning peak or afternoon peak, but they went out there and counted for 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening on one day, just to get a snapshot. So ideally we could go everywhere, but what gets measured gets managed. We've been counting car traffic across the nation, the state, and in your community for decades. So we really know how many people are driving cars. But we don't really know that much about active transportation. This was the first step, and one of the recommendations of the plan is to continue doing this on an annual or biannual basis and perhaps augment it with some automatic counters. You can talk to, even the tube counters now are available to count cars and bikes at the same time. So that's something to look at down the road. So if we map that, you can see from the locations we selected that the larger the circle, the greater the numbers during that peak hour. So it's encouraging to see that even at just those selected locations, we've got over 700 people walking during the peak hour and over 200 people cycling. So there is activity out there already. But there are a lot of gaps in the network. So about 22 miles of sidewalk gaps according to our Geographic Information Systems analysis. And most of them were just missing sidewalks. And that's not necessarily an indictment of how the council does business, but that's really about how the city has grown over time. Sidewalks are typically filled in as part of street improvements with developments. Some of those, though, we might look at targeting and filling in a gap before the development occurs. An example is on Gear Road, where there's a vacant site, but it's a very heavy pedestrian demand. You can tell by what we call the goat tracks. It's just the worn dirt through there, and it's really a place where those sorts of things could be filled in advance of development. Bike gaps, the dots are intersection limitations where there's difficult to cross intersections, 7 connection gaps, and varying corridor gaps. But it's not just about the gaps in the existing network. We also heard from the community that some of the existing network bike lanes are a little bit deficient in terms of maintenance. So that's been brought to the city's attention, and staff will be looking at that as well through their regular maintenance programs to make sure that when we do an overlay, it goes right up to the curb and trying to target those areas that the community have identified as maintenance needs. So as I said, we obtained community input through 2 public meetings. The city has these markups as well, and we digitized them and added that into the input. So the aspirations, what were people saying? I don't know if you'll be able to read some of these, but I'll just highlight really the general theme that I took away from the public input was they wanted their children to be able to walk and cycle to school safely. That was probably the #1 thing that we heard. Maybe I'll point out one. Schools aren't clogged with parent drop-off. I think we all see that that's a problem. It's not just here in Turlock, it's a problem all over the country. And I think building a better bike network, a better walking network is going to go a long way towards helping address that. So this is the vision in words. I'll just pause on that slide for just a moment. The first part is really about what is it going to feel like. The second part is about the network, about a seamless and connected network, and that's what the next maps will show. But before we get into the maps, a quick primer on what Caltrans calls the classification of bikeways. Up until this year, there were just 3, paths, lanes, and routes. Paths can be shared with pedestrians, as you can see there. They're generally through parks or along waterways. Lanes are, as you see there, they can be either just a standard lane or a buffered lane. A buffered lane has a hatch marking to provide a buffer between either parked cars, or if there are no parked cars, moving traffic. If there are both, the buffer can be applied between both. And the idea is to just help bicyclists move a little farther away from car doors, which is really the greater threat. Someone who parks their car, throws out the door without opening, that's far more catastrophic, and it turns out is the greater threat as compared to being hit from behind, which is a very rare occurrence. So if there's enough room, we would put the buffer on both sides. A Class 3 bike route is usually on lower volume streets, lower traffic streets, and it's basically just a sign that says this is a bike route. It's about providing some continuity between the bike path and lane facilities. A newer tool is the shared lane marking. Similar to what I was talking about with the buffered bike lane, It's a bicycle symbol with a hat on top of it, and it can be used for wayfinding, but generally it's used to help encourage bicyclists to stay away from parked cars and to legitimize riding out further in the lane, which is legal. Oh, and the fourth type, which I didn't put a slide up, is called a Class 4. It's a cycle track, and it's something maybe to aspire to in the long term. As we look at road renewals, major projects, we could look at ways to build more separation in. Caltrans is working on, as part of AB 1193, they're working on a guideline for what that should look like, and we're expecting that in February of next year. So while this plan doesn't currently have cycle tracks in it, or Class 4 facilities, separated bike lanes, the update to this plan very well may do so. And it could be, I think, it's already in our design toolkit, so we're primed for it, should there be an opportunity. The plan goes into a series of typologies. There are, I believe, 7 different street typologies that match your road hierarchy from major arterials down to industrial streets. And so that's really the intersection between the design toolkit and your street design standards. So the existing bikeways, as you can see, are somewhat disconnected. The green lines are paths, the blue lines are bike lanes, purple lines are routes. The general plan proposes to basically take it from about 40 miles to add another 80 miles, roughly 120 miles over the long-term future. This plan came up with additional recommendations. And then we have a map in the plan that shows from the highest priority projects of the general plan and the ATP recommendations. Those are the yellow highlighted corridors. So how did we prioritize? We prioritized based on things like, is it in the general plan and in a priority improvement area? Did it have public support through the public meetings? The consultant team also looked at, is it within a half mile of an activity generator or a safety challenge? Does it close a gap? And what are the costs and the engineering challenges? So if we look at what the network might look like within 5 to 10 years, that's what we're talking about. So if you just kind of look at all the colors together, you start to see the network starts to stitch together. If we look at only those projects, i.e. turning off the existing networks, that's what we're talking about building. What it adds up to is about 41 miles of existing lanes, paths, and routes. The general plan proposes to add about 80 additional miles, mostly lanes, as you can see, 55. ATP recommends an additional nearly 13 miles, and so you can see what we're totaling up to, a network of about 130 miles. We also looked at pedestrian projects. The red dots are places where there are missing crosswalks or an identified desire line to consider ways to cross the street. The dashed lines are areas where there are gaps in the sidewalks. And those could be either just filling in those gaps or creating a shared use path along the road. And then the purple shaded area is the area that would be covered by your downtown planning efforts. So there's the list. As you can see, the numbers are just the ones that were the highest priority projects, and it adds up to roughly, I think it's 22 miles. So the implementation plan, this is a sample sheet. I don't expect you to be able to read it, but basically the contents of each sheet are a description of what the project is, the destination served, whether right-of-way is needed, a vicinity map to orient yourself, a concept plan, a very high-level concept plan, what are the benefits of it, and a rough order cost estimate. So these really help kickstart the application for grants, as Wayne will talk about in a little bit. So the projects add up to roughly $7 million worth of work. I should point out that this is over the long term, and that some of these may be funded through grants that help cover general streetscape. So it's not necessarily just about walking or cycling. It could be money that is spent on improving the street in general for all users. The appendices, as I covered before, there's a picture from our rodeos, the Safe Routes to School report, the maps, design toolkit. That's the cover of it, and the guidebook. So with that, I'll turn it over to Wayne to tell you about one of our earliest successes.
You've done an excellent job, Wayne.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, members of council, community members, we were successful. The city submitted 2 grant applications. They were derived largely from this process. We talk about 2 different ADPs. One ATP is the plan, which we've been talking about tonight. The ATP program is what the state manages. That's the grant funding program. And it just happened to be that concurrently these 2 things were going on at the same time. So we submitted 2 grant applications. We were successful with both, which was great. There was a 617 applications submitted statewide. It's completely competitive. Only about a little over 100 got funded, and one of ours actually ranked 6th from the top. So we actually did pretty good. Yeah. What this means to the citizens of the city of Turlock is that we're going to be getting over $1 million in federal funds for projects that are in the ATP. We have a 3rd project that is still pending, so we may be having even more money, it's about $500,000. So we'll find out next month about the status on that one. So the total project cost is about $1.5 million. The difference is going to be made up with other federal funds that we're going to leverage, as well as some local funds as well. But the total impact to local funds is going to be fairly minimal. So we did. It's good to have most of that be federally funded, and we were the only agency in Stanislaus County, so that's good too. So I really appreciate the input from the community members for these applications. We looked at a lot of different things. It wasn't just the priority projects in the ATP. That was a starting point, but we really relied on input in the community sessions as far as which of the priority projects are important. We also looked at things like, what are the requirements of the grant program? What projects make sense to score the highest? And so maybe the most worthy project from our standpoint didn't get submitted because we realized it would not score as highly. So we tried to be strategic in which projects got submitted. Just as a brief overview on what those are, one of them is Christopherson Parkway improvements. There's going to be Class 2 facilities there with some green sections at high conflict areas like turning points. We're also, I'm sorry, thank you. Oh, you got them on there, great. Forgot about that. So here we go. Buffer bike lanes the entire length of Christopherson. We have bike lanes on Kroll Road. So right now on Kroll from Christopherson to Ansel Adams, you do not have bike facilities there. You don't have marked facilities, I should say. So this would do some adjustment to striping, and you would actually have those Class 2 facilities there. It would involve removing parking on one side of the street, as well as an always stop at Ansel Adams to provide a good transition to the Class 1 facility on the university campus. And we're also going to finish connecting the loop as well. When you get to Christopherson near Tegner, there's that short section where there's nothing there right now. It's just dirt. And so what we're going to also included in this is a bike path connector. Sorry, all right, I'm not familiar with, yeah, there you go. There you go. You'll do there you go. Okay, so do we have one for Tegner? There we go. That demonstrates. So you have this kind of old dilapidated roadway there. What we're proposing doing would be to we're going to have the Class 2 connection. It's going to come right down here, and now we're going to have a connector that brings you up to where the existing road ends. And that'll be a Class 1, and then the Class 2 will pick up and provide connectivity. So you could actually be going down Christopherson, make a right-hand turn, and do a big loop. You can use our existing infrastructure. And so it provides greater connectivity to the residents. And as I don't know if you caught it in the presentation, but we actually are also proposing in the future to expand the bicycle and pedestrian facilities along Golden State. So in the future, what we'd like to have happen is you could actually cross the street and go southbound along Golden State in a Class 1 dedicated facility all the way down to Monte Vista to access your commercial center. So that's long-term vision planning too. The next project, also a great win for the city, would be Linwood Avenue improvements right near Cunningham School. We've had a lot of issues over the years there, not just in terms of pedestrian and bicycle accessibility, but with traffic congestion and safety. So what this project will do will be to widen Linwood out to the north. We're going to install curb gutter sidewalk, bicycle lanes, provide greater connectivity there. just a concept of kind of what that would look like if the improvements were overlaid on top of the existing conditions. And what is not shown here, but is also part of this project, would be a first of its kind, high visibility, pedestrian activated hybrid beacon. It's a little bit different than a typical warning system. If you've been up near Kroll Road, you see that new nice warning system really grabs your attention. This is actually going to be even a little bit better than that because it's not a warning system, it's a legally required stop. So it's 3 different signal section heads, but essentially a pedestrian pushes that, all vehicles are required to stop, and you have a crossing there right in front of the school that allows the students to safely do a complete trip. Because right now you got bike lanes going one way, but you don't have it the other. And so this would allow them to legally make the complete trip, the round trip. And so with that, that's the status of those applications, and keep your fingers crossed for application number 3.
Yeah, absolutely. City Manager.
Wayne, there's one more step for the funding, and we want to fully disclose what has to happen for the funding to come. The step.
CTC, correct. This is the award. The award notification that we've been given is staff recommendations for the award. This will go before the California Transportation Commission at the end of October for formal award. So all of this is tentative at this point. We have no reason to believe that the Commission would make any changes with the findings. They didn't during the last one, but it is tentative until then. The other thing with this funding source is there's a lot more work because the entire process goes through the California Transportation Commission. So it basically adds 2 months of lag time at every step along the way, but staff is going to be diligent about working with those timelines, remaining compliant, and meeting all those milestones. But I appreciate that clarification. It is technically tentative at this time.
The CTC meetings are open to the public.
They are, yes.
And they would, I'm sure, be impressed.
What are you getting at, City Manager? What are you getting at?
Well, I think this would impress the CTC.
I'm kidding. Yeah, awesome. All right.
Any other questions?
Any questions or comments for Wayne? No, absolutely. I think you might be a victim of your own success here at the podium. You have to present more here coming forward. So, very good job. Is there any public comments on this item?
Just one second.
Oh, yeah.
Let me just wrap up with the Planning Commission recommendation.
Oh, absolutely.
They did recommend unanimously to approve the active transportation plan to you, and they also recommended that we incorporate the roadway standards in the active transportation plan into the general plan more directly. The bicycle map that is in the general plan will be replaced by the system map that you just saw John present. In addition, we have added some policy changes in response to the Planning Commission's recommendation that more directly incorporate the active transportation plan roadway class standards into new master plan areas, and then for us to consider those as we are doing the improvements, just like Wayne was just discussing, incorporating those into existing areas. So finally, the actions before you tonight are to find the projects exempt. The green sheet that you have is a slight little typo with regard to the sections in the CEQA guidelines. So we'd like you to use that for introducing the motion, and then to approve the active transportation plan, amend the general plan, and make the 3 proposed changes in the general plan itself. Okay?
Right,
so with that, I'll conclude.
Thank you. I will, any questions or comments from the council? Yeah, comments.
I just want to, it's just been amazing to watch this kind of all unfold over the years. I remember being at the general plan meeting where we broke up into small groups, and everybody kind of came back with comments about what they thought should be changed in the general plan, and every one group mentioned, there's a lot of gaps in our bike lanes, and another group said, yeah, I've seen that too, and next thing you know, the whole conversation turned towards bike lanes, and I think some of you were present at that meeting, and this whole effort sort of emerged from that, and we asked you guys to participate in the process, and you guys took up that challenge and have really seen it through, and it shows in what we've accomplished here. Having ridden my bike to Cunningham Elementary School as a child, it's just great to see that being taken care of. It's just, we had fun jumping off of curbs and riding in dirt, but it's probably a lot safer this way. It's really a testament to our community. I mean, we sometimes people give the council credit for the community that we have, and really it's the people in our community that are actively engaged and make these things happen that make our community great. You guys make our jobs easy. And so thank you guys for your time and effort, and thank you, staff, for everything that you've done to facilitate this as well.
Any other questions or comments? All right. From the public, Elizabeth, did you want to add a feeling? Come on up.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. In August of 2013, I sent myself to the Safe Routes to School National Conference. At that point, my family had been bicycling full-time for 3 years, and though we had experienced many benefits from this choice of transportation, few people around us felt comfortable bicycling in Turlock. And so I went to learn what people were doing in other places to encourage people to get on their bikes. And I met an incredible group of people who were doing amazing things to advocate for active transportation. It was eye-opening because I didn't know such excitement and innovation was going on throughout our state and country, supporting people's choices on how to move around their communities. And so I came home and began to look for ways to be involved. And it was around this time that Wayne York directed me to Rose Stillo, who was leading up a team of people to develop an active transportation plan, a bicycling and walking plan for the city of Turlock. Now, I was very new to this type of involvement, and I did not know what to expect. But I also knew that I wanted this document to reflect as much as possible the real experiences of people and the real hopes they had for the future. Today you are presented with a document which is the result of months of work by so many people. And this document, if approved, will help guide the city in planning our bicycling and walking network in the future and will assist Turlock in getting more funding. But for me, it is so much more than words on a paper and maps. Because I believe that active transportation has the power to transform people's lives. And I believe it because I have lived it. And though there are copious amounts of research and data out there to support this belief, it is in my day-to-day experience that has convinced me that my life is so much better because I bicycle in Turlock. But I hadn't met many others who believed the same as me until I went out and started telling people about the ATP. And what I found was community. People who love Turlock, but who also want the choice to move safely and conveniently by bicycling and walking. People who live in the north and the south, on the east side and the west side. People who choose active transportation, and some of them who use active transportation because that is their only choice. These are people who stand up for Hispanic mothers who walk to Wakefield Elementary. These are people who advocate for better access for students who bicycle and walk to CSU Stanislaus. These are people who work and have worked in our city who are willing to listen and problem solve so that our streets can be safe for all types of transportation. These are people who are willing to write letters of support on behalf of their own children, and people who are willing to write letters of support on behalf of children they have never met, so that those children can have sidewalk and bike lanes across from their school. Because not only can active transportation transform an individual's health and finances, it can also change a community. Because when we move out of our isolation into a place where we can connect through looking at each other eye to eye and speaking to each other as the simple act of active transportation encourages us to do, we become the people who watch out for each other. And Turlock becomes a better place to live. And so I thank the city for letting me be a part of this, for answering all my myriad of questions, and especially to Wayne and Rose for that. And I thank Alta Planning and Design, and specifically John, who has taught me so much about streets and transportation and legislation. But most of all, I thank each and every person who showed up, who filled out the surveys, who sat on the corners counting people walking and biking, who came to the workshops and shared their stories of their experiences and observations of Turlock, because they are Turlock. And you, the people, make it such a fabulous place to live. Thank you.
Thank you. So much clapping. It's good. This is good. Anybody else from the public like to address the council on this issue? Yes, please. You don't have to raise your hand. It's okay. Only council members have to raise their hands. Yeah.
Hello, council, mayor, and citizens of Turlock. Hi, my name's Jeffrey Sparks. I moved to Turlock last November. Just a few things about me, if you haven't heard before. I just started working at Homar Cheese Company last year. I got my food science degree at UC Davis, and I'm excited to move to Turlock. So what I'd just like to say today is just to kind of offer my perspective as a bicyclist about some of the topics that have been discussed today. Bicycling is kind of my main form of transportation. I do have a car, but bicycling is my hobby and a really enjoyable thing that I like to do. And so anyway, just to kind of put maybe a couple of concrete examples on some statements that were said today, it might seem just like a little bit of an overstatement to say, oh, our community will be better, if we improve bike infrastructure, but really, I am a bicyclist, and this is not an overstatement. Just last week, I was riding my bike up north from work on First Street frontage to Golden State there, and there was a woman, and she was she was struggling with her bicycle, and so I, of course, pulled over and I said, hey, do you need any tools? And she said, yeah, you got a crescent wrench? And I had a crescent wrench, and then we talked and chatted about bicycles, and that just happened last week. And then a few weeks before, outside my house, I live on Monroe Avenue, not too far from here. There was a woman in an electric wheelchair whose electric wheelchair was stuck on the curb, sort of, and she was struggling there. And I saw some cars drive by her, and it took me a while to notice. Actually, yeah, she couldn't get up the sidewalk, but on a bicycle, it's something you can notice. And so it took me a while to notice it. But she's struggling to get her. So I noticed that. Got off my bike and helped her. So those are just the kinds of things you notice when you're on a bike and not driving. So that's just to kind of put some concrete perspective there. Those are both pretty recent events, and I'd just like to offer that perspective that the things about how bicycles improve individuals' lives is really not an overstatement. It makes me really happy to do those sorts of things. So just thanks for listening to that.
Thank you. Absolutely. All right, that's the sense of community that we're striving towards. Anyone else from the audience like to address the council? All right. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council for final comments or consideration or whatever they want. So we have a motion by Councilmember Bublock, second by Councilmember Jacob, to introduce the motion and the resolution. Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Motion and resolution passed 5-0. Thank you so much for... Absolutely. I think Councilmember Nascimento said it best. You guys do all the heavy lifting and the hard work, and then we get to pass it and get the applause. So thank you for that. Absolutely, yeah. Moving on to item B, a request to approve the fiscal year 2014-15 draft consolidated annual performance and evaluation report for the Community Development Block Grant Program, Home Investment Partnership Program, request to authorize submission of the CAPER to the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, and request to authorize the mayor, city manager, or designee to execute related necessary documents. Mayor and Pitt.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm just shocked that people don't want to stay and listen to this.
Don't take it personally.
Just as a side note, I just want to thank the council serving as the successor agency for your support of the ROPS and the determination of the $700,000 to set aside toward Avena Bella Phase 2. As you might have noted in your 24-hour update, that Avena Bella Phase 1 was submitted as a Valley Blueprint, and we were notified of the Award of Excellence to the City of Turlock and EAH, our developer partner, for that particular project. And the active transportation project that we just got the funding will actually impact the flow of those children that live at Avena Bella back and forth to Cunningham School, and it all works together. The item that you have before you is the draft consolidated annual performance and evaluation report, which is basically our accountability as the City of Turlock, and Turlock is a lead agency in the Home Consortium, to the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development with regard to the projects we plan to undertake in the annual action plan and then are required to report on those projects in terms of accountability and expenditure of funds. So the item before you basically is the motion approving the attached document that outlines the specifics of accomplishments in that particular, for those particular funding sources, and authorizes us to submit the documents to HUD. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments for Mayor?
Because you know these are always all about a lot of paper.
Yeah. Any questions or comments from the public for Mayor on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council. Any final comments, or what's the pleasure of the council? We have a motion by Councilmember Bublock, seconded by Councilmember Jacob. Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, motion carries 5-0. Thanks so much, Mayor. Moving on to scheduled matters, a request to direct staff to move forward with the issuance of the downtown parking study RFP. Oh, we got slides. All right. Evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, members of the public. Tonight before you, we're bringing the request for proposal to prepare a downtown parking plan for your review before the RFP is issued, to make sure that staff is on target with what you're looking for as far as the scope of service and the overall goals of what we've identified in this RFP. So the overall goals and objectives is to obtain consulting services to prepare a parking analysis for the downtown Turlock area. Within the plan, we want to analyze current and future parking demand, and then look at near-term and long-term options for parking supply options. And overall, the goal is to ensure that parking does not constrain the growth and success of current or future downtown businesses. So that is kind of the framework we've looked at within this RFP. This gives you an idea of the project area. We are looking at including all of the area of the downtown master plan, the downtown overlay district. So it includes all of the various downtown overlay area, not just the downtown core, but kind of reaches out in the thought that parking throughout the downtown will have an impact overall. So for the scope of work, we did identify, we kept the scope of work. We don't want to get too specific in the RFP. We don't want to limit the creativity of consultants. There may be things when they come back with what they propose to do that we want to make sure we don't limit their expertise and creativity, but we also want to make sure that our main goals are identified and are covered within this project. So we do want them to determine the peak weekday and weekend parking demand, recommend improvements for our current parking situation. Are there current deficiencies, improvements that could be made? And then also using our general plan growth projections. The general plan has a 2032 horizon, but using those projections to come up with incremental improvements that could be made to the parking demand, to the parking supply, as the parking demand will increase in relation to the growth that we project to see with that general plan growth projections. So and then have recommendations that are phased, looking at parking improvements. So give some generalized locations of improvements that could be made and how to finance those improvements. And also we do want to make sure that looking at the feasibility of a parking garage, the timing of when a parking garage would be needed, how to finance construction of a parking garage, and then also how to continually operate and maintain a parking garage. How would we finance that? And make sure that if and when a parking garage was needed in the downtown, how do we make sure that that's something that is sustainable? For the process, we've looked at having the consultant as part of the process survey the businesses and property owners within the downtown area to get an understanding from them if they're seeing issues with parking, what their current concerns are. We do want to hold at least three public meetings to get input from the public in general. Hopefully we can have enthusiasm like the ATP had, but to get feedback from members of the public, how do they feel parking's impacting them, or there are reasons that they are not coming to downtown, or are there areas that they would like to see parking improved. We will also have a presentation to the Planning Commission, and then we anticipate at least 2 council presentations with the consultant. Staff can provide more updates to the council, but we anticipate having the consultants do a midway check-in with the council, and then at the end, and then staff can fill in and give updates also as we go through the process. We are asking that the consultant, whoever they may be, maintain a project website where there are updates available to the public as documentation is prepared, that be available on our website. Also be a place that members of the public could provide feedback on the plan. We anticipate then we would create an advisory group, so we'd have city staff working with the consultant through the preparation of the plan from various city departments. And then also we're going to reach out to the Downtown Properties Association to have representation on this advisory group to represent the kind of main downtown core area property owners, and then reaching out to the chamber to get a wider range input from business owners in a larger area of the downtown, and then looking at having the planning commissioner on the advisory group to try to get various input on the plan preparation. And then through that process, then we'll create the downtown parking plan document. So the next steps will be to get the RFP out so that it's available for consultants to bid on. We're going to hold a meeting, anticipating holding that on October 7th, where consultants who are interested in bidding on this plan could come and ask questions if they want further clarification from what is in this RFP. We're looking at having all of the proposals submitted by October 30th, having the advisory group then review those proposals and select a consultant out of those proposals, having the contract issued in January, and then being back to council with the final parking plan in the summer of 2016, so next summer. So that's what we're looking at, and happy to answer any questions or take any feedback on anything you'd like to see.
Any questions or comments? Yes, Councilman Nascimento.
I noticed we're asking them to maintain a website. Could we also ask them to maintain some sort of Facebook community page that they could help solicit input that way and share what's being updated on the website?
Sure.
Any other questions or comments? Any questions or comments from the public? All right. Yes, please. You want to come up to the microphone? Yeah, and all the people watching.
Hello. Thank you. I just had a question about the measurements of the parking spaces. I noticed that they're different in different locations, but I couldn't give you specific businesses now. So I have a Honda Civic and I have a GMC SUV, and sometimes one doesn't fit. You know, sometimes the Civic barely fits, and sometimes the GMC doesn't fit, so I have to park like way further away and walk with the kids too. I'm just curious if is that just something that has been overlooked, or is there supposed to be specific measurements for the parking spaces so that are consistent throughout downtown?
We do have standards that regulate on-site parking, so you know, in parking lots, the angles of the parking will vary the size of the stalls. There's also allowance for compact spaces, and so any new developments that were coming in and we were reviewing would make sure that they comply with those standards. But it could be that over time parking lots have been restriped or changed, that those parking space sizes have evolved over time. So anything new, we do have standards for the sizes, but sometimes as times change, those weren't always the case. Mike, do you have anything to add to the?
I think it's important to remember too, we have minimum size parking spaces, so we just make sure they're not any smaller than a certain size, but developers can also make them bigger, and sometimes they choose to do that. So it may just be that if you're in a parking lot, somebody just decided they wanted to make them larger than our minimum standard. And when we do get down to our very minimum standard, they are really tight. So.
Any other questions or comments? Oh, Director Pitcock, do you have something to say? Don't twitch over there because we're going to think you want to talk. All right. If not, I'll bring it back to the council. I just have one item. I really like the fact that we have good bullets that we want them to meet, some good parameters, but also not hindering the flexibility and the creativity of the professionals with this RFP. So I appreciate that. Very good. So with that, bring it to the council for consideration.
I'll introduce the item and thank staff for bringing this forward. I know I met with Debbie a long time ago, and it's been a sort of a pet project, and so I'm just glad to see this moving forward. So happy to introduce it. Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Nascimento, seconded by Councilmember DeHart. Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes, motion carries 5-0. Thank you so much for all your hard work. All right, moving on to 8B, a request to adopt a traffic calming program for the purpose of establishing guidelines and policy for reviewing and approving traffic calming requests. Mr. York, don't expect applause every time you come to the microphone.
Oh, that's all right. Good evening again, Mayor, members of council. Over the past few years, we've seen an increase in the reports of speeding in residential neighborhoods. These calls come into both the Traffic Engineering Division as well as the Police Department. We have a good working relationship where we work together with them. Residents are naturally frustrated at the increase in speeding, and they often ask about speed bumps to address the problem. And so unfortunately, we do not currently have any established standards or procedures for them to make such a request or for us as staff to evaluate it. Past installations have been done at the direction of council directly or through new developments. Residents intent on seeking speed bumps after development are required to seek permission from the council directly. So in an effort to be more responsive to our citizens, staff began working on a policy and a list of procedures to provide greater guidance to them. Rather than focusing on speed bumps only, which some cities do, they just have a speed bump policy, we took a broader approach to develop a policy that would include a variety of traffic calming items, and such as radar feedback signs and small median islands. They range in cost and type of installation, whether it's appropriate given a situation. But the variety of options can provide greater flexibility to residents, and as well as to the cities. We look at what best fits in a particular situation. We also developed a simple, straightforward process for residents to follow to seek these improvements. It's essentially a 4-step process that you go through. The goal here would be that residents understand exactly where their request is at and what's being done at any given point in time. The traffic calming program that you have in front of you today is a result of those efforts. It's an effort by a variety of city departments. I really appreciate over the past, I think it's a year and a half, we've been kind of starting to formulate this and then coming to where we are today. I do want to highlight a few major points for your consideration. The program reinforces the idea that speeding is primarily an enforcement issue, at least initially. And so as a first step, we want to provide the police an opportunity to address that. And so you'll recognize that in the procedures outlined. And so we give them that opportunity prior to permanent fixtures being made within the roadway. And so this policy reflects that. The city engineer retains discretion to ensure that whatever options that may be ultimately selected are safe and reasonable for the conditions. So you'll see some pre-approved devices in there, but there's other ones that could be possible too. But a resident is not going to come in and say, this is what I want. They can request that, and then we evaluate that to determine what's appropriate. Currently, all the expenses associated with the process, from the application study fee to the cost for installation and maintenance, projected maintenance amount, would be the responsibility of the applicant, is the way it's drafted right now. And while the city includes a list of pre-approved devices, we're open to other innovative ideas that could be equally successful. There's a lot of great ideas that come out at any given point in time. We want to be open to that, but we would just need to evaluate those to make sure that they're safe and appropriate for the installation. On a related note, related to this, we often get asked about installing stop signs in addition to speed bumps as a way to slow traffic down. However, state guidance in the California Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices directs for stop signs to not be used as speed control devices, which is a position that's maintained by the traffic engineering community at large as well. And the reason for that is the purpose of stop signs is really for regulation of traffic and not speed, so controlled crossings and pedestrian crossings, things of that nature. So if there's any question about why that was omitted, it was intentional. So in summary, we believe that this traffic calming program clearly outlines the policy and rationale for traffic calming so that residents understand where and why such installations are made, which could help reduce any perceptions that decisions to approve or disapprove a device are arbitrary in nature. We don't want them thinking that. We want people to understand exactly why we're doing what we're doing. And we also believe that by clearly defining a process, we're providing customers an avenue to address those concerns. In addition, this program is specifically listed under the policy goal number 4 of the strategic plan we just talked about this evening, so that was approved. So I'm open to any questions of the council.
Any questions or comments for Mr. York? Yes, Mr. Councilmember Nascimento.
This is specific to residential streets, and I want to be clear that it's not just streets where residents' homes happen to face, right? This is a specific classification. So if your home happens to face a collector, this wouldn't apply.
Correct. One of the criteria that's outlined in there is functional classification, so it's limited to a residential street.
Okay.
Yes, Councilman Jacob.
And so just to clarify then, if, for example, somebody puts in this application to have speed humps or bumps or whatever we're calling them installed, the cost associated with that, we're asking the applicant to pay for that?
That's correct.
Okay. And is there a process in place, kind of going back to the gentleman's comments, so that the application can be put forward by the members of that assessment district to have that money forwarded over? Is that something that we can look into?
The way that it's currently drafted is we ask that the lead applicant kind of take that lead role in working with their neighbors and be the point person, so the city deals with one person. So the way the policy is now, that's how that would be. If the will of the council would be that we do that differently and we work individually amongst the whole community, that's an option as well. But currently, right now, it's dealing with the lead applicant.
Okay. And then my second question, and this is something that I get asked often, is about stop signs. And I understand the point that you made is that it's not meant to be a traffic calming measure, but what is is there any other application or process that people can put in to request some sort of study to be done? What's the process there, if you can sort of just enlighten us?
Sure, absolutely. So when there is a request for a stop sign, what we do is it's really a request for a multi-way stop. And so we have a process for that. We have a form that we go through, and the state outlines the process we go through, and it's a multi-way stop warrant. So we get that request. We have a process to go out and evaluate it. We look at things like accident history, volumes. Speed is a factor in that as well. We also look at more subjective items, proximity to schools. We look at things like, is there visibility issues? Is there issues with left turn conflicts? Is there, things like that. And so we run it through, and if it checks all the boxes, then it's recommended for approval. Ultimately, that goes to the city engineer for his approval, and if he approves it, we install it. Kind of along those lines, we've actually gone through this. The state has recently revised the process and streamlined it a little bit, which has been helpful for us. And we've recently installed several multi-way stops. Well, we have one installed at Quincy and Marshall that was recently installed, and then we have another one in the works at Olive and Wayside, which will be an interim 4-way stop until the traffic signal is installed there in 2 years. What was that again? The other one is at Olive and Wayside. Yeah. And so that met the warrant under the new guidelines. And there's another one also in front of the Foster Farms facility at F Street and 7th. It's a T intersection. There's a lot of pedestrians, a lot of employees that cross over there every day. And so for pedestrian safety reasons, there's been several accidents there. And this revised form and process has been helpful in allowing us to make those changes. So hopefully does that answer your question?
Okay. Questions or comments? Yeah, Councilman Nascimento.
Back to the assessment district question, and maybe this might be a question for Mike, is, it introduces kind of an interesting dynamic because there are funds that these folks are paying into for the maintenance of those facilities. But if there was an area of safety concern identified in an assessment district, and the neighbors say, hey, we would like to have something done, can't we use money from the assessment district to do that? Is there a mechanism for that? And I don't necessarily want to encourage, I don't want speed bumps through all the paseos in town, but I mean, it would seem that there might be some funds there if staff agreed, so yeah, this is a serious safety concern, we should be addressing it, and there are funds available in the assessment district, they could just go ahead and do that. But I don't know if...
Well, when the assessment districts are formed, they're formed for a specific reason, and we outline exactly what they're paying for, and that is very specifically a slurry seal every 7 years. If there were additional funds for whatever reason, we were collecting more funds than we were going to spending, I would say that there's possibly we'd have to go talk to the legal aspect of utilizing those funds. But I think if there's, more than 50% of the people were interested in doing so, I would say that we could consider it. I would not want to do it at the expense of slurry seals and postponing doing slurry seals, only because that if we're going to maintain our current local streets to the level where they need to be, which is in the condition they are today, we got to continue to do the slurry seals every 7 years. Postponing that is going to make it, it's going to jeopardize your ability to maintain your street network.
Yeah, Councilman DeHart.
Mike, forgive me, but I've got a question. I need some clarification on what you just said, because it's more than just slurry seal, my interpretation or understanding. We installed lights on a street in the northeast corner, so it's far more than just slurry seal. And so my concern, getting back to the gentleman's question about whether it's bumps or whether it's a stop sign or whether it's some other level of service, it could very well be lighting. We tend to street lighting, we tend to medians and landscaping beyond the slurry seal piece. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're correct.
Okay.
The formation documents are basically fourfold. One is we measure the curbs distance or lengths for street sweeping.
Right.
We also measure the square footage of the public landscaping for maintenance of the public landscaping. We count the number of street lights, and we have a factor in there for operation and maintenance costs, electrical costs associated with that, as well as the square footage of the streets in the neighborhood, which then covers the cost of the slurry seals. But it's very defined 4 things that we're going to pay for. So it's not just a fund that we collect a bunch of money and that we can do various improvements.
Is there any way we could scoop up the gravel that's left behind and make it a speed bump?
For those who are, the question is, on the slurry seals, as part of the slurry seal curing process, when they actually lay it down and it first cures, there's a crust on there, and it breaks down over time, and there's gravel that forms. They will be coming by on a pretty regular basis to do some street sweeping to collect that. Unfortunately, I don't think it can be used for speed bumps.
Used again?
No, it'd be kind of difficult.
Thanks, Mike.
Councilman Nascimento.
I think it's important too to remember. I think when we think of speed bumps, I can't remember the name of that road that just has speed bump after speed bump, Tuolumne, and it's just terrible. So we think of that and think, well, what neighbor would pay to have all that done? And that's not necessarily what we're talking about. It's like the gentleman mentioned, he just wants one speed bump, or he wants the one flashing sign that says the speed limit is 25 miles an hour, and that's, I think, reasonable for one person to take the lead on, and perhaps go around and solicit his neighbors and say, hey, it's going to cost $500. Do you want to chip in? And I'm sure some of his neighbors would oblige him. And so I think it's important to keep the scope in mind, that we may be talking about just minor, not a bunch of bumps down on an entire street, but maybe a single speed bump in a particular area where it's going to be very effective.
In fact, Minnesota and Tuolumne would both not qualify under this program if we were to have to go through this today. Just per this program, that's...
Councilman Jacob.
I sort of have a struggle with asking the applicant to front the money for something that would make their area safer. It seems to be something that would promote the wealthier neighborhoods to be able to have safer streets, and the lower income areas or places where there are renters to not be able to afford to have those measures put in. So I sort of am looking to see, do we feel comfortable with making that the process? Or I don't know. I know it's a funding issue, and that always gets a little bit messy.
I think it's a great question, and we can look down to Marin to see if an income qualified area would it be possible to direct some of those funding into an income qualified and create a process that would allow a demonstration of income to qualify. I'm not sure if the monies could be used that way, though, or not.
We certainly can help in areas with pedestrian and all of that, but getting into the roadways is a different issue, and it's somewhat problematic, but I'm happy to dig and look in the research to see if we can find an exemption.
Yes, Councilman Dehart.
Can I just-
Director Pickhock, you don't realize you have 5 new traffic engineers up here, so we're going to be helping you out with all this stuff.
Hey, I can use the
Dehart.
help.
Traffic engineers and one historian. Going back in time just a little bit to the Tuolumne experience, or the start of the Tuolumne experience, based on our discussion, am I to understand that each one of those speed bumps was paid for by the resident who installed that thing in front of their house? Or was it by action of this council, or that council at the time, that made a line item expenditure to cover that?
It was the council at the time voted to install the speed humps, but we used the money from a federal overlay project to pay for those. To my knowledge, there is no speed humps in town that have been paid for by the residents post the construction of the subdivision. A prime example of a couple that were installed, I think, are good examples of what we could build here, is on Berman. It's 2 small speed bumps along this stretch of road that connected Berkeley and Colorado. The developer at the time felt that there was a need for some sort of a measure, and the city engineer at the time approved that installation. So these are the types of installation locations that we think are possibly a good location for that. Tuolumne, South Avenue, probably not good installations. We have them there, but the fact is the fire trucks have issues getting to their calls, the police department as well. So we're trying to limit it to residential streets only when you look at the functional classification, no arterials, no industrial, no collectors, to really try to enable the fire department, the police department to do their duty, but also provide the residents an opportunity to have some sort of a traffic calming measure in other locations.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, Councilman Nascimento.
Just one more. So during the study, the applicant comes in, puts down a deposit, you guys go out and evaluate the street, and say the determination is there's really no need for any traffic calming, that it's just sort of a typical situation. Maybe they've got 1 or 2 neighbors who race up and down the street, but that's the extent of it. If the applicant still wants to proceed forward, is he able to, or is that sort of, do we just say, listen, it's not warranted, we're not going to allow it?
The way it's drafted right now would be that the city engineer would make that determination, and it would essentially be a denial, and there would be the opportunity for appeal to the city manager.
Okay.
And he would make that final determination. I would imagine practically we would continue to work with them and maybe work with the police department again to see if we can continue to address those issues or come up with a creative,
Sure.
innovative solution. But technically speaking, yes, it would be a denial and then an appeal if they so chose.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, city manager.
Would you like us to try to develop some kind of an income qualifying a process to apply for a neighborhood, going to the concern about less economically able areas? I think we could come up with something. Maybe there's not a funding mechanism other than the general fund or maybe some of the road monies, but certainly could look at how do we create an equity there.
Vice Mayor.
So how many are we looking at in a year? How many times do you get these kind of questions?
About once a week.
Okay.
I get the request about once a week for speed
And are
bumps.
they typically the same areas, or are there overlays? And each time, what's kind of a rough estimate of ones where we need to act, or just to tell them that we're not going to be able to do anything if there's nothing that is giving us any reason to think that there's a hazard?
Well, it's difficult to say without studying it, but anecdotally, just being familiar with the city, I can say that there's several of them. Probably one out of 4 or 5 that I would look at and say, yeah, that really does make sense. The application of it is appropriate. If there happens to be speeding around, there's one in particular, I can't remember exactly which one, but it's a cul-de-sac but with a knuckle, and there's just a lot of speeding that happens. They get around that corner and they speed all the way down. Well, there's probably a great location to put a speed bump, 1 or 2 in there. So there are some where the situation dictates that, but without evaluating it to know for sure, it would be hard to say exactly how many of those would be valid or not. The other point, or I guess question I would have for the council is we talk about possibly looking at income qualifiers for the fees. Are you speaking to the application fee or are you speaking to the cost of the installation, or are you speaking to both?
I think that's a great question, because I think your intent was the application fee, but the actual installation, you're not going to start divvying up neighborhoods and aren't going that far. Yes, Vice Mayor.
So my concern is, I'm not a lawyer, nor am I an engineer, but, I mean, if we put ourselves in a position where we say, okay, we're not going to ask you to pay up front, now we've identified that we have a problem, that there's a hazard, and, I mean, we're going to have to pay one way or another. So how much money are we talking about, roughly? If nobody ever has to pay, we just use our resources, how much, roughly?
Well, the application fee is based on cost recovery, so we're looking at about $400 is per application fee.
Geographically, where do you see these? Are they mostly in North Turlock, South Turlock, East Turlock?
Most of the complaints that I receive are in North Turlock, and really northeast Turlock. Some northwest, some up in the Paseos. A lot of northeast Turlock.
I think it's probably all the potholes in South Turlock that slow everybody down there. It's the traffic, unintentional traffic calming measure. Yeah.
Allison's team's on it. There's no potholes in this town. That's right. Good. I think that was a very good question. I think that starting to divvy up certain neighborhoods into saying what's income qualifying or not, I think that could get problematic. But I just don't want to misconstrue the intent of your question. If you had heartburn over the application fee, or if you had heartburn over the fact that application fee plus you wanted to try and have some income qualifying for the project installation as well. I don't know which. I want, I guess, clarification.
I don't really see a difference in my mind. I think that.
Well, I guess the question is, so someone comes in and qualifies for income qualifying subsidy for the application fee. That's one thing. You're looking at $400, so it's a $200 subsidy, supposedly, theoretical, versus the project. This person qualifies, so then the project goes through. We're talking thousands of dollars for
thousands of dollars, yeah.
Speed humps, so they therefore qualify. I guess that's where I get problematic. I see the need, perhaps, at the front end for application, because you don't want to discourage someone that comes in and has a genuine concern, and because they don't have the money, they're not going to get that process. But then now the second part, that's getting to a very costly thing, not to mention if that person qualifies, that could be one household versus a checkerboard effect. I mean, does the whole income or does the whole neighborhood qualify, and it gets into that type of rhetoric and qualification. I think it's problematic, but I don't want to misconstrue intent. So, Councilman Jacob.
I think if you only limit the income qualifying for the application fee, it'll result in people putting in an application, getting that fee waived, and then if it goes through and it looks like it's one of those 1 out of 5 that actually it merits having something installed there, then they're not going to be able to afford it at the second stage of the application. So it doesn't really make much sense to me to do one without the other. If they can't afford the application fee, they certainly can't afford the installation fees either.
Are we getting a little sideways?
I guess we're looking for just general direction on a policy. This is what staff's been working on in terms of the financing of it. Right. Whatever direction the council would like, we'd be willing to look at.
We could certainly measure the experience and report back in 6 months or a year, and see what the experience shows.
Well, since it's once a week, we could actually, I think 3 months would be an adequate amount of time if we could shorten that, sure. Especially just to gauge, because I think that you're getting into a costly amount, and I think it's not even, so once someone applies and we go out there and we look and it says it's okay, it qualifies, and we get funding for it, it's not that they get the price tag, it's do we want to give not special treatment, but specific treatment to low income, saying, okay, because you applied and you happen to be in a low income neighborhood, we subsidize your application fee and we're going to subsidize this project. So it's actually deterring from a person that didn't qualify, paid the application fee, and then they have to wait in line for funds, right? I think it's too mixed. I like the idea about adding on that we look at this for 3 months and come back to reassess. Is that adequate? Do you think that's sufficient? I'm looking at council members. Okay. Do we have any?
I'm just going to say, staff, I can definitely track those over the next 3 months and track every request I get, and then what the result of that is. How many choose to go through the process? Great. How many choose to? No problem.
Perfect. Any questions or comments from the public? Yes. Hey, how are you? Sticking around till 8:50. That's great.
if we've already said this, I'm sorry for asking, but now how do other cities handle this?
Good question.
Have we talked about that?
Yeah, absolutely. At the start of this process, we looked at a lot of other different cities, and really there is not much consistency across the board. Some of them put all of it on the residents, some put all of it on the city, some do half and half. Some have the commission established, and the commission's the one that makes the decision. It's kind of an interim part of the council. You got some that only do speed bumps. You got some that do all traffic control. So it was difficult as we did the research to kind of get a starting point and gauge what other people are doing. It's really all over the board. So.
Yes. Follow up.
So I'm certainly not suggesting that we have to be like anyone else, because Turlock is innovative, and I really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I think my concern is if I'm looking at the city, just for the overall safety of the city, and I applaud the city staff, because I can't even imagine how they do everything they do already. So I'm just wondering if there's something that we can do that will handle the safety overall, and if we can look at how much will it cost, how much does it cost right now for city employees to look at these things? Do we know that already? And how much would it cost for the city to kind of like, if the city paid for it, this is how much it would be, that's how much it costs for the city staff and the hours that you're already doing. Kind of like a comparison. This is what it might be. Does that make sense?
One of the advantages of a resident pulling an encroacher permit and hiring someone themselves is they are not paying prevailing wage. So the cost of the project to be done by a private party is probably going to be significantly less than city staff working at our fully burdened hourly rate out there. And so it really depends on the type of project. If we're talking about installing a lot of speed bumps, that's one thing. If we're installing just a couple of radar feedback signs, it's going to be a different story. So it really depends on the type of installation of traffic calming we're doing. But I would say, generally speaking, it would be probably cheaper for a private party hire.
Okay. Yes. Anyone else from the public? Okay, I'll close public participation. Bring back for additional comments. Councilman DeHart.
Just for clarification, do we have design standards, and is a project involving calming measures required to be inspected by city staff, and permitting and application fees and expense of the installation and all that?
Correct. So the policy goes into detail exactly what those construction expenses would be, and there is all of that involved. There is design costs, there's material costs, labor costs, inspection costs. In fact, even projected maintenance costs in there. So those are front-loaded in there so that later on the city staff has the funds to maintain those devices, whatever that may be.
Perhaps when we get the track record over the next 3 months, we could have a pro forma illustration of what a typical installation might look like.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Take a sample street and say this is what it would look like. And
sure. How much money we're talking about.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, what is the pleasure of the council?
I will introduce the item.
With,
set forth on the agenda.
do you want to add that we're going to be analyzing the data for 3 months to?
Yes, and asking staff to return after 3 months' time to report back on how the program is going.
Perfect. Do I have a second?
Second.
Oh, it's a tie. All right. So we have a motion by Councilmember Nascimento, second by Councilmember DeHart. With what Councilmember Nascimento said, clerk, please call the roll.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, motion carries 5-0. Thank you so much. And for those watching out there, if you don't think that we have enough steam still to talk about speed humps and stuff at 8:50 at night, you're wrong. This council is devoted to traffic calming. All right, council items for future consideration. Looking to my left, yes, Vice Mayor?
So I'm not sure, but I'm guessing that Maggie White is in the back. Just wave your hand there. Okay,
Hey,
so
Maggie.
she's from CSU Stanislaus, and so I'm thinking that we need to start doing some representation here, and I'd like for us to put on the future, perhaps having an ex officio position She's working as the government relations coordinator with the student body, and so we'd like to have some options, maybe just have a seat at the table as an ex officio or a position on the agenda to speak, whatever, just some options to bring back so that she's welcome here to come and share what's going on at Stanislaus. Let's throw that all out there.
Yeah,
I think she's coming. You're going to come every meeting, right? Yeah.
I think we have, I think there's direction to have staff, bring that back and bring some options. Yeah, bring some options, yeah. All right, any other items? All right, council comments. Looking to my left, looking to my right. No council comments. City Attorney, you've been awfully quiet down there. What's going on in closed session?
Thank you, Mayor. We're going to adjourn the closed session to consider item 11A, Public Employee Performance Evaluation, pursuant to California Government Code 54957B1, title City Attorney and title City Manager.
Perfect. All right, I spoke with the city manager earlier, and he agreed to postpone his evaluation. So without objection from the council members, we will move to adjourn. Who is motioning? We have a motion by Councilmember DeHart, seconded by Councilmember Bublak. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. We adjourn.